Chapter 584. Flawless Chapter 624. Introduction. Flawless, the golden and silver light in Fan Xian's eyes shone, and in an instant it passed through the surface of the Taoist body, directly illuminating the essence of the Taoist, and directly seeing through everything the Taoist cultivated. So this is the so-called leakless Jin Dan. It is indeed a different world, and not as shallow as I had expected. After seeing through the Taoist cultivation, Luo Fan couldn't help but exclaim in his heart. Previously, when he saw ordinary cultivators on Earth, Luo Fan had deduced the cultivation system on Earth through the cultivation methods of the cultivators. He knew that their ultimate goal was to cultivate to the Jindan stage, to become a Jindan stage Taoist master, to have a lifespan of 3,000 years and all sorts of powerful abilities. Thus, he was quite disdainful of the Jindan cultivation method. He only thought that this kind of method could not even compare to the cultivation method that any living being with even the slightest bit of intelligence had comprehended in the primordial world. Only after seeing the Taoist cultivation did he realize how wrong he was in his previous opinion. That's right, the cultivators on Earth obviously had great divine abilities or saints who could open up such a mysterious heavenly realm. How could the cultivation techniques that were passed down be so shallow? Only then did Luo Fan know that the Jindan stage cultivation method that was left on Earth was only a portion of the entire Jindan stage cultivation method. It could even be said that it wasn't even a tenth of the entire Jindan stage cultivation method. The essence of the Jindan stage cultivation method, however, was all in this heavenly realm and could even be said to be in the heavenly court. Fan Xian's cultivation had already reached the peak of the Tai Gold and was hundreds of millions of times more profound than any cultivator in the heavenly realm. With this level of cultivation, it was naturally easy to analyze a cultivation method that already had an example in front of him. Therefore, with just a glance, he could tell what the essence of this old Taoist cultivation method was and what his final achievements were. He could even easily create all sorts of wonderful cultivation methods based on this essence of cultivation. At this moment, the old Taoist did not have the Jindan that a cultivator had achieved when he became a Jindan stage Taoist master. Inside his body, other than the Xiantian true essence that was constantly circulating in a rather mysterious trajectory, there was no core of power at all. It was as if he was a low-level cultivator who had just stepped onto the path of cultivation and had just produced Zhenqi. If it was anyone else, they might be a little suspicious. Luo Fan knew very well that it was not that there was no golden core in the old Taoist body. Instead, it was filled with golden cores. It could even be said that the old Taoist body was a giant golden core. The inner muscles of the body, bones, blood vessels, meridians, internal organs, bone marrow, and so on, are all part of the Jindan. In Luo Fan's eyes, as the old Taoist Xiantian true energy continued to circulate, threads of Houtian Yuan entered his body, passing through his hair, skin, and muscles. His meridians, bones, marrow, internal organs, and other parts of his body were refined and transformed into 1,000th of his original true essence. The true essence merged into his body that was originally almost innate, constantly strengthening his inner strength, and in turn, tempering his body and raising his physical quality. No matter how much Houtian Yuan Qi entered his body, no matter how many impurities there were, none of them could come out and leave his body. It was as if his body had transformed all the power and impurities into power through some mysterious method. It was because of this special characteristic of entering and not exiting that Luo Fan called it leakless. It is also because of this that the spirit, qi, and spirit will not leak out at all. That is why one's lifespan is endless and will not be depleted with the passage of time. Unfortunately, after cultivating this leakless golden core, one's lifespan will no longer be limited. Eternal life is no longer an illusion. It is a pity that because it is leakless, one still has to endure endless tribulations. I'm afraid that every few years, one will have to suffer a backlash from the heavens and earth. It is not a carefree life. Luo Fan sighed as he sighed. The leakless golden core could refine all absorbed qi, regardless of whether it was essence or impurities, into its own strength. This naturally contained a profound mystery that could make anyone gasp in admiration. But similarly, no matter how exquisite this method of refining qi into one's own strength was, even if it reached the level of Luo Fan's nameless divine art, it was impossible to achieve a 100% efficiency. In other words, no matter how exquisite this refinement method was, it was impossible to completely refine and transform all the impurities, and even some of the essence that was not compatible with one's body. There would definitely be some things that were not beneficial to one's cultivation remaining within the body, remaining within the leakless golden core. The negative effects caused by these remnants, no matter how minute, would eventually erupt after a long time. At that time, it would naturally cause all kinds of backlash from the heavens and earth, forming various kinds of tribulations, such as heavenly tribulation, earthly tribulation, human tribulation, wind tribulation, fire tribulation, and so on. Only through this kind of tribulations, with the help of the infinite power of the heavens and earth, could the impurities in the leakless golden core that were not beneficial to one's cultivation be erased, allowing the leakless golden core to become pure and complete again. Only then could one continue to exist in the heavens and earth, and even make great progress in cultivation. As for how long it would take for the various kinds of tribulations to erupt, and what kind of tribulations it might cause, it all depended on the level of the cultivator's cultivation method. Perhaps some cultivators had to go through a tribulation every few hundred years, and some even had to go through it after millions of years. It all depended on one's own situation. What Luo Fan saw at this time was that the cultivation method of the old Taoist in front of him was extremely exquisite. Based on this cultivation method, coupled with the fact that he was cultivating in a holy place like the heavenly court, the interval between two tribulations would be at least more than 300,000 years. Of course, this was only a rough calculation. If the old Taoist used some special method to absorb the postnatal essence of the heavens and earth in a short period of time into the leakless golden core, then the tribulations would naturally come earlier. There was no need to say more. After understanding the essence of the leakless golden Dan, combined with the fragrance coming out of the Dan furnace, Luo Fan finally understood what kind of pill the old Taoist in front of him was refining. As long as there are rules, there will be loopholes, even if it is the law of immortality. The nature of the leakless golden core causes cultivators to encounter tribulations, and there are countless wise people who have created all kinds of methods to alleviate this kind of tribulations. Luo Fan sighed inwardly. According to what he sensed, these pills could remove the impurities in the leakless golden core through various special reactions. Obviously, the old Taoist refined it to delay the tribulations. However, the characteristic of the leakless golden core was that it was leakless, and no pill could violate this nature of cultivation. Removing the impurities was equivalent to removing the impurities from a body. In a sense, it was already leaky. However, no matter how precious the pill was, it could not remove all the impurities. It could only alleviate and delay the tribulations, but could not completely eliminate them. Chapter 585, Zenith Heaven. Right at this moment, the auspicious cloud above the old Taoist's head shook. The three white lotuses spun and emitted an incomparably huge and mysterious force that shot straight towards the pill furnace at the center of the room. As the force arrived, the pill furnace shook violently. Accompanied by the exuberant, pure yang flames below, the lid of the pill furnace shot into the sky with a bang. Thousands of particles filled with medicinal fragrance shot into the sky from the mouth of the pill furnace, and they shot straight towards the roof tiles above. Judging from their momentum, they seemed to be in a hurry to escape. The old Taoist smiled and flicked the horsetail whisk in his hand. A seemingly material force was instantly emitted and enveloped the entire pill refining room. The thousands of particles filled with medicinal fragrance suddenly froze under this force. Like mosquitoes that had fallen into amber, they instantly stopped moving and became extremely still. At this moment, a particle that was as dazzling as the sun shot into the sky at a speed that surpassed the thousands of particles from before. It even broke through the power that the old Taoist had emitted and completely froze the entire pill refining room. It directly surpassed the thousands of particles and arrived below the roof tiles. It looked like it was about to break through the roof tiles and rush out of the pill refining room. From then on, it would be free and unfettered, and it would no longer be a pill. Luo Fan saw all of this and nodded to himself. He was rather impressed by the old Taoist's pill refining methods. The thing that had flown out of the pill furnace earlier was not the pill that the old Taoist had refined this time. It was merely something condensed from the pill dregs that the old Taoist had left behind. Only the last particle that was as dazzling as the sun was the old Taoist's goal this time. It was the wondrous pill that could delay the calamity. Earlier, the pill dregs were able to shoot into the sky the moment the pill furnace was opened, as if they wanted to break through the layers of barriers and break free from the old Taoist control to obtain freedom. Clearly, they possessed a rather high level of spirituality. Just the pill dregs already possessed such spirituality. It was easy to imagine the extent of the old Taoist pill refining skills. Although the main body of the pill that rushed out from behind seemed to be only a step away from breaking through the barrier and obtaining freedom, Luo Fan knew that this was definitely within the old Taoist's expectations, and that the pill would definitely not be able to truly escape his control. After all, although the elixir had a certain level of spirituality, it was still lacking compared to a normal person. Compared to the old Taoist who had cultivated the leakless gold core and had a cultivation that was comparable to a perfected immortal, the difference was huge. How could he hide it from this old Taoist? Sure enough, it was just as Luo Fan expected. The old Taoist's smile did not change. The auspicious cloud above his head rolled slightly, and one of the 3 white lotuses on it separated and floated gently. However, in an instant, it surpassed the speed of the pill itself. Before the pill was about to touch the roof, it wrapped around the pill and stored it away. Then, the white lotus spun and returned to the auspicious cloud. The old Taoist waved his hand, and the hundreds of thousands of pill dregs above him flowed into his sleeve like a flood. In the blink of an eye, they all disappeared without a trace. Then, he waved his hand, and the pill that was originally stored away by the white lotus on the auspicious cloud appeared in his hand through some mysterious channel. The old Taoist finally smiled in joy when he saw the medicinal pill. The old Taoist was indescribably happy as he said, "With this tribulation-traversing golden pill, I can at least delay the heavenly tribulation for 1,000,000 years. The materials that I spent 80,000 years painstakingly gathering were not in vain." The pill was golden in color, and there were countless complicated and profound lines on its surface. It was as if the great Tao had left traces on it. This pill was the tribulation-traversing golden pill that the old Taoist spoke of. Its spirituality was not any weaker than any other living being. In the old Taoist's hand, it was even trembling nonstop, as if some kind of living being was constantly struggling and trying to escape. The old Taoist did not care about the pill at all and did not hesitate. He opened his mouth and sent the pill into his mouth. He couldn't wait to swallow the pill right after it was refined. From this, it could be seen just how much the old Taoist cared about the heavenly tribulation that would come several 100,000 years later. It could also be seen just how much pressure the heavenly tribulation would bring to the many cultivators in the heavenly realm. The gold and silver light in Luo Fan's eyes shone again, and he instantly saw through all the changes after the pill entered the old Taoist's body. As the pill flowed down the old Taoist's throat, it continuously melted at an unimaginable speed. When it reached his stomach, it had already turned into a dazzling golden stream of air. This stream of air was like the toughest and most tangible existence in the world. It was not at all illusory like normal gas, nor was it scattered like normal gas. As the stream of air continuously flowed, it gradually fused with the old Taoist body, and in the end, it could no longer be found. Only a strand of indescribable aura flowed ceaselessly around his body, and every single time it did so, strands of strange matter would be brought out of his body. Unfortunately, this tribulation traversing pill is still a little lacking. If I'm able to take a step further and refine the legendary tribulation terminator pill, then it would be able to replace the third strand of golden immortal chi. What a pity, what a pity! The old Taoist seemed to be unwilling in his heart, and he sighed. The golden immortal chi? Luo Fan couldn't help but be shocked when he heard this. Luo Fan didn't know exactly what the golden immortal chi was. However, he was extremely familiar with the words golden immortal chi, because at this moment, his main body was diligently searching for the golden immortal Tao fruit of legend. Luo represented perfection. The golden immortal chi represented perfection. Even though he didn't know exactly what the golden immortal chi was, since it was named after the golden immortal chi, then it was more or less related to the golden immortal Tao fruit. No matter how weak and uncertain this connection was for Luo Fan, who was using all his strength to search for the golden immortal Tao fruit, he absolutely couldn't let it go. Could it be that I haven't really seen through the cultivation method of the leakless golden pill? Such a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. With such a thought, he pushed his gold and silver eyes to the peak and carefully examined every bit of the old Taoist body. Originally, with Luo Fan's cultivation realm, as long as he was unwilling, no matter what he did, it would be impossible for the old Taoist, who was equivalent to the realm of true immortals, to discover it. However, don't forget, in this heaven realm, in this alchemy room, it was not Luo Fan's real body, which was at the peak of primordial unity gold number in the untainted world. It was just a doppelganger formed by the condensed power of a thought. Even his cultivation realm was only at the individual immortal realm. With his cultivation realm, it was still a level lower than the old Taoist. If he didn't make too big of a move, like before, the old Taoist naturally wouldn't discover it. However, if he made too big of a move, he could no longer hide it from the old Taoist. Obviously, at this moment, Luo Fan pushed his gold and silver eyes to the peak and carefully examined the old Taoist body, but he couldn't figure out any small movements. In an instant, the old Taoist's six senses didn't sense anything, but there was a feeling that some powerful existence was peeping at the deepest secret of his body. The old Taoist could be considered as the peak of cultivation and power in the entire heavenly realm. He was confident in himself, and it was impossible for him to doubt his own feelings. Therefore, the moment that strange feeling appeared, the old Taoist's expression changed, and he shouted, "Who's peeping at me? Come out." As he spoke, he waved the horsetail whisk in his hand. The 3,000 threads of worry on the horsetail whisk instantly disintegrated, turning into hundreds of millions of mysterious runes, condensing into an ocean in the void, instantly filling the entire alchemy room. Even the inside and outside of the alchemy furnace in the middle of the alchemy room were not spared. This ocean was formed by runes, and its form was extremely profound. It contained unbelievable power. It even faintly resonated with the 500 billion runes that formed the heavenly realm. This resonance caused countless runes to appear out of nowhere in the space enveloped by the ocean of runes. They flowed wildly, as if they wanted to destroy the space in an instant. With such a change, even with Luo Fan's ability, it was impossible for him to continue hiding. His figure was finally revealed in the ocean of runes. However, even so, the ocean of runes could not enter within 3 feet of him. I didn't think I would be forced to reveal myself here. Luo Fan could not help but sigh, but his expression did not change much. Although the old Taoist divine ability was slightly out of his expectations, it was not enough to shock him. "Who are you? Why are you peeping at me here?" The old Taoist expression changed drastically when he saw Luo Fan's figure, and he shouted sternly. Based on his expression, it was obvious that even though he had made a move earlier and used his divine ability to force Luo Fan to reveal himself, he did not actually believe that someone was hiding around. Now that he saw Luo Fan suddenly appear out of nowhere, he realized that someone could actually get so close to him without him noticing. When he thought about how he was on the verge of death without realizing it, the old Taoist felt a chill and anger in his heart. Following the change of his thoughts, the sea of runes that filled the entire pill refinement room shook and surged madly towards Luo Fan's location. Judging from its momentum, it was simply like a raging sea that was wreaking havoc. It only took an instant. The ocean of runes in the entire alchemy room instantly disappeared. Instead, a rune cover surrounded Luo Fan's body. The runes in it flowed crazily and combined crazily. Extremely sinister and mysterious combinations kept appearing and disappearing on the rune cover. It seemed that a destructive force that could destroy the world would erupt at any time and wipe out everything in the cover, including the void. The power of the realm of true immortals is not much weaker than that of the innate gods in the realm of true immortals in the untainted world. Is this the effect of the so-called Daoyuo Qi? Luo Fan measured the power of the rune cover, and such a thought flashed through his mind. The old Taoist had obviously cultivated to his current realm with the help of the acquired Qi of heaven and earth. According to Luo Fan's previous thoughts, it would be difficult for a cultivator who cultivated with the help of the acquired Qi of heaven and earth to compare with a cultivator who cultivated with the help of the innate Qi of heaven and earth, or even the chaotic Qi. At this time, the old Taoist performance completely violated Luo Fan's previous understanding. How could Luo Fan not be surprised? However, at this time, although Luo Fan's cultivation was only in the realm of individual immortals, he had the support of the peak of the primordial unity gold realm. Although the old Taoist magic was strong, it could not hurt him. No matter how the rune cover changed and how much power it increased, it could not penetrate within 3 feet of his body, let alone hurt him. The old Taoist tried hard for a long time, and finally knew how big the gap between him and the person in front of him was. Although he was extremely unwilling and angry, he could only suppress it rationally. He raised his hand and shook the handle of the horsetail whisk in his hand. The rune cover instantly collapsed and turned into hundreds of millions of runes again. They quickly gathered toward the handle of the rune, and in the blink of an eye, they condensed back into the 3,000 threads of worry and turned back into a horsetail whisk. During this process, Luo Fan did not move at all. He just looked at the old Taoist with interest. Of course, the action of carefully examining the inside and outside of the old Taoist with the help of the golden and silver eyes naturally stopped. Previously, the old Taoist did not find out, so he could naturally do whatever he wanted. But now that the old Taoist had found out, if he continued to act like that, it would be a humiliation to the old Taoist. If the old Taoist did not think it through, it would cause irreparable consequences. Naturally, Luo Fan would not be so unwise. The old Taoist bowed to Luo Fan and said, "I am Lier. How should I address you, fellow Taoist?" But he did not mention that Luo Fan was spying on him, and that he had exerted a strong attack on Luo Fan. This old Taoist, cultivated from a mortal to the leakless gold core, obtained immortality, and could call himself an immortal. Naturally, he could not be a fool. The situation just now might be confusing to others, but he knew better than anyone. The person in front of him was many times stronger than him. As long as this person was willing, he could even kill him without expending much energy. Although the old Taoist was confident, he still had this bit of self-awareness. Even in the situation where there was such a huge difference in strength, the person in front of him let him do whatever he wanted, let him attack, and did not launch a counterattack. The person just looked at him indifferently. What was the meaning of this? Wasn't it obvious enough? It was obvious that this person had shown mercy. As for why this person showed mercy, perhaps this person had something for him to do, or perhaps he felt that it was wrong to spy on him, or perhaps this person was kind-hearted. As for the specific reason, it was naturally not something that the old Taoist who called himself Lier could know. But there was one thing that the old Taoist was extremely sure about. If he did not know how to restrain himself, and continued to act recklessly. He did not need to think too much to know what would happen to him. Because of this, the old Taoist acted as if nothing had happened before. It was as if he met Luo Fan by chance on the road and greeted him. When Luo Fan heard the old Taoist's words, he could not help but smile slightly. The old Taoist's reaction was quite fast, and it saved him a lot of trouble. Therefore, he also smiled slightly and said, "My name is Luo Fan. This time, I came here with some doubts, and I would like to ask you for advice. I wonder if you can enlighten me?" As he spoke, he lightly stepped forward and landed on the ground. He stood face to face with the old Taoist 10 feet away. When the old Taoist saw Luo Fan approaching, he only felt an aura that was like seeing a legendary existence from a long time ago. It made his heart tremble inexplicably, and he could not help but rejoice at his previous decision. When he heard Luo Fan's question, he said, I don't dare. What do you want to know? Just say it. I will tell you everything I know." Luo Fan could naturally see the change in the old Taoist mood, but he was too lazy to care. He asked directly, "You have cultivated to a leakless golden core, and you have to go through several tribulations to achieve longevity. I already know this, but what is the Daluo Qi you mentioned before?" The old Taoist's eyes were slightly blank, as if he was wondering what the leakless golden core that Luo Fan mentioned was. However, he quickly understood, and there was even a look of realization in his eyes. Obviously, he knew that the leakless golden core that Luo Fan mentioned was referring to his current cultivation achievement. Leakless, so the root is here. I have cultivated for hundreds of thousands of years, but I still didn't know that the root of the golden core and longevity is here. The old Taoist murmured. He seemed to have gained a lot, but he also seemed to feel regret. The name Leakless Golden Core was just a name that Luo Fan came up with based on the old Taoist cultivation method. The cultivators in this realm were not Luo Fan, so it was unlikely that they would name this realm the same as what Luo Fan had come up with. In fact, in this realm, there was only one cultivation realm after the Golden Core, and that was Immortal. Cultivators who had not transformed their Golden Core into a leakless Golden Core and could not achieve longevity were only Golden Core Enlightened Masters. Even if the Golden Core of a Golden Core Enlightened Master was thousands of feet in diameter, and the power it could exert was enough to move mountains and drain seas and destroy the world, they were still Golden Core Enlightened Masters. Only when the Golden Core underwent a qualitative transformation and completely merged with the physical body and soul, becoming truly leakless and allowing the cultivator to achieve true immortality, could they be considered to have broken through the realm of Golden Core Enlightened Masters. And that kind of cultivator, because they had already achieved longevity, was called Immortal. There was no limit to the path of cultivation. Naturally, achieving a leakless Golden Core was not the end of cultivation. After a cultivator achieved a leakless Golden Core, their cultivation naturally continued, and there were still countless possibilities for them to improve. However, no matter how different the cultivators who achieved a leakless Golden Core were, or even if there was a difference of thousands of times in their cultivation, there was no specific realm to distinguish them. They could only be called immortal. As for what kind of immortal it was, whether it was an itinerant immortal, earth immortal, ghost immortal, deity, heaven immortal, exalted immortal, flying immortal, undead immortal, or whatever, it was up to the cultivator's preference. They could be called as they pleased, but there was no specific rule, so there was naturally no distinction between realms. Because of this, the old Taoist had always thought that he had become an immortal and obtained longevity. Even if he called himself an immortal, he would never conduct an in-depth analysis of the source of his longevity. Naturally, it was impossible for him to come up with a name like the leakless Golden Core. That was why he had such a strong reaction when he heard Luo Fan suddenly reveal the source of longevity. Chapter 586. The Path of the Daluo. Still 5K. Suddenly, the true essence that circulated endlessly in the old Taoist body seemed to have undergone some kind of inexplicable change. It seemed to have become more stable, more tenacious, and even the feeling that was close to the Daluo was slightly stronger than before. It was obvious that understanding the source of one's cultivation would be of great benefit to him. After a long time, the old Taoist returned to his senses and bowed to Luo Fan. "Thank you for your guidance, fellow Taoist." Looking at the way he addressed Luo Fan, he had already changed from fellow Taoist to fellow Taoist. Obviously, after understanding his own cultivation and the essence of his own longevity, he understood that he was also a member of the path of Tao, and there wasn't much difference between him and the Jinan masters of the past. Therefore, he changed the way he addressed him. "Forget it, you just need to tell me what the Daluo Qi is." Luo Fan smiled slightly. He didn't mind the old Taoist changing the way he addressed him, and he just said. The old Taoist didn't hesitate at all and said, "This isn't a secret. Since fellow Taoist wants to know, I naturally won't hide it. The Daluo Qi is this thing. It's the door for us to cultivate the endless Jindan. Legend has it that after the convergence of the 3 flowers and the realization of 5 Qis, one can break through the path of immortality and step onto the path of sainthood." As he spoke, the old Taoist's body shook slightly, and 2 strange airflows suddenly emerged from his body. Through an extremely mysterious method, they gathered at his chest, and then they rushed up to the auspicious cloud that was 3 feet above his head. Then, they circulated in the auspicious cloud according to an extremely mysterious path for countless times, producing some subtle and unimaginable changes. Then, they combined with a certain existence in the auspicious cloud and suddenly transformed into billions of light ribbons. They hung down from the auspicious cloud and protected the old Taoist body. The light was dazzling, and a strange fragrance assailed the nostrils. Green lotuses condensed from qi condensed in the surrounding void out of thin air, and they floated indeterminately. The 3 flowers at the crown, the 5 Qis unifying. So that's how it is. Luo Fan couldn't help but come to a sudden realization and exclaim in admiration. Luo Fan's cultivation state was at the pinnacle of the primordial realm of gold, which was tens of thousands of times more profound than the old Taoist in front of him. Logically speaking, there was nothing in this old Taoist that he could not understand. However, the 2 strange gases that the old Taoist had triggered had already surpassed the limits of his understanding. In his senses, the vast majority of the 2 streams of gas, or nearly 99% of their existence, held no secrets to him. It could be said that they were the conversion and condensation of the old Taoist priest's life essence. Although the method of conversion and condensation was indescribably exquisite, it wasn't enough to shock him. What shocked and even shocked him was the inexplicable existence that he couldn't understand outside of 99% of the total number of people. That tiny bit of existence contained a mystery that Luo Fan had been diligently pursuing. That was the legendary mystery of great perfection, or rather, it was the legendary secrets of the grand heavenly immortal realm. The grand heavenly immortal realm of this world was indeed the same as the grand heavenly immortal realm of the primordial world. Of course, it could also be that Luo Fan himself came from Earth, and the grand heavenly immortal realm of the primordial world came from his concept. The grand heavenly immortal realm in his concept was the viewpoint that had been passed down from Earth since ancient times, which was why it coincided with the grand heavenly immortal realm. But no matter what, knowing that the qi contained the mystery of the grand heavenly immortal realm, Luo Fan naturally couldn't let it go. He said, "Is there a method for the 3 flowers at the crown and the 5 Qis unifying? If there was a method, I would have cultivated for hundreds of thousands of years. Even if I couldn't cultivate it to perfection, I would definitely be able to cultivate it. How could I only cultivate 2 Qi now?" The old Taoist could not help but smile bitterly when he heard Luo Fan's question. The 3 flowers at the crown and the 5 Qis unifying were the legendary supreme states. The 3 flowers were naturally the 3 white lotuses on the old Taoist's auspicious cloud. With Luo Fan's eyesight, he was easily able to discern that the 3 white lotuses were formed from the essence, energy, and spirit of the old Taoist before him. They contained unbelievable might, and even their defensive ability was thousands of times stronger than the physical body. Even though this contained all sorts of profundities, Luo Fan did not attach importance to it. On the other hand, the five Qis unifying was obviously to condense the quintessence of life into 5 strands of grand heavenly immortal Qi. Thus, the 3 flowers and 5 Qis would be able to possess great might and raise the essence of life, allowing one to step foot onto the legendary Holy Road. Luo Fan couldn't help but be slightly disappointed when he heard the old Taoist. However, he was only slightly disappointed. The Tao of the grand heavenly immortal realm was so profound that even Luo Fan's main body in the primordial world couldn't see through it. So how could there be a technique that could be directly cultivated? The situation the old Taoist spoke of could be considered to be normal. Never mind. Since there's nothing to rely on, then I'll directly cultivate according to the cultivation method of the Anusrava golden core. Such a thought flashed in Luo Fan's mind. At this moment, Luo Fan's main body in the primordial world was only a step away from attaining the grand heavenly immortal realm. The importance of the secrets of the grand heavenly immortal realm to him had even surpassed his original goal of returning to the earth. Thus, he would absolutely not let go of even the slightest possibility of obtaining the secrets of the grand heavenly immortal realm. Destroying the cultivation foundation of this clone to cultivate the golden core was utterly not a choice to him, and it could practically be said to be something that he didn't even need to think about. Thus, Luo Fan smiled lightly and said to the old Taoist, "I'm rather interested in the grand heavenly immortal Qi. Feel free to tell me how you can cultivate 2 strands of grand heavenly immortal Qi." The old Taoist had never imagined that Luo Fan would actually speak these words, and he couldn't help but be stunned. The old Taoist definitely didn't think that Luo Fan would actually want to cultivate his own cultivation method. After all, according to the concept of the heavenly realm, there was no regret in cultivating the golden core. Once one cultivated the golden core, then the future path of cultivation was completely determined. Other than the cultivation method of the same system, it was absolutely impossible to cultivate other cultivation methods, and it was even more impossible to change cultivation methods halfway. The person before him was so powerful that even the old Taoist couldn't catch up to him. In the old Taoist's opinion, at least the path of the golden core was much longer than the old Taoist's. Of course, it was even more impossible for the old Taoist to change cultivation methods. Under such circumstances, no matter how rich the old Taoist's imagination was, it was impossible for him to think in such a way. After being stunned for a long time, the old Taoist frowned and obviously fell in a deep thought. No matter what world, what era, a cultivator's own cultivation method was the cultivator's biggest secret. Even if Luo Fan seemed to be able to crush the old Taoist with one hand, it was not a reason for the old Taoist to easily give the cultivation method to Luo Fan. Surrounded by the countless green lotuses and enveloped by the belt of light, the old Taoist's expression kept changing. The auspicious cloud above his head kept churning, and the 3 white lotuses floating above him opened and closed at a much higher frequency. From this, it could be seen how intense the old Taoist's mental struggle was. Luo Fan was not anxious. He just stood there and quietly looked at the old Taoist. Naturally, Luo Fan could understand the struggle in the old Taoist's heart. It was natural that the old Taoist couldn't make a decision for a long time. After a long time, the old Taoist finally made his decision. All the changes in his body calmed down, and the white lotuses above his head opened and closed at a normal frequency. Luo Fan did not ask. He just looked at the old Taoist indifferently and waited for him to speak. The old Taoist seemed to have made a great decision. An extremely determined expression appeared on his face as he said, "Originally, the cultivation method is our biggest secret, but since you want to know, it is not impossible." Luo Fan nodded. He had already expected this, but he was not surprised. He just raised his hand and made an inviting gesture, waiting for the old Taoist to continue. The old Taoist did not let Luo Fan wait for too long and continued to speak. He continued, I only need a promise from you. After you succeed in your cultivation, help me cultivate a strand of Grand Luo Qi. As the old Taoist spoke, a relieved expression appeared on his face. At the same time, he looked at Luo Fan expectantly. It was obvious that he was very concerned about this condition and hoped that Luo Fan would agree. Luo Fan said without hesitation, of course. As long as I can cultivate it, it will not be a problem to help you cultivate a strand of Grand Luo Qi. To Luo Fan, cultivating the Grand Luo Qi and obtaining the secrets of the Grand Luo Qi was the most important. Compared to this, everything else was not a problem. Not to mention helping the old Taoist cultivate a strand of Grand Luo Qi. Even if the old Taoist wanted to go to the primordial world, he was willing to think of various ways to help him. Naturally, he would not waste his breath on this condition. When the old Taoist heard Luo Fan's words, he carefully looked at Luo Fan. Clearly, he was weighing whether Luo Fan was truly serious or just trying to deceive him and plot against his cultivation method. Luo Fan's expression was calm as he looked at the old Taoist indifferently. There was not much emotion in his eyes, nor did he make any promises that he would definitely keep his promise. He just looked at the old Taoist calmly. However, it was this calmness and indifference that made the old Taoist truly understand how passionate this person's pursuit of Tao was. He understood how firm this person's will was. He also knew how serious this person's words were. In an instant, he understood that since this person said that he would help him cultivate a strand of Grand Luo Qi, then he would definitely help him. There would definitely be no other possibility. Understanding this, he finally relaxed. He said, since that's the case, come with me, fellow Taoist. Luo Fan nodded. The old Taoist's body moved. The auspicious cloud above his head, the two strands of Grand Luo Qi, the countless green lotuses, and the three white lotuses suddenly retracted and sank. They entered the top of his head and disappeared without a trace. As for the subtle and profound changes in his body, there was naturally no need to talk about him. After retracting the 3 flowers and 2 qi, the old Taoist flicked the horsetail whisk in his hand, and the door of the alchemy room suddenly opened. Another building appeared in the outside world. Luo Fan smiled faintly, and he revealed an indifferent expression. He wasn't surprised by this, and he followed the old Taoist out of the alchemy room. The buildings outside were rather beautiful, and they exuded an ethereal feeling. It was similar to the legendary fairyland, and it made one feel as if they had already stepped into the fairyland. If the old Taoist hadn't met Luo Fan, he would only be extremely complacent about this. But now that he had met Luo Fan and knew that he cultivated the leakless golden core, he understood that he was only an ordinary cultivator on the path of seeking Tao. So, he didn't feel complacent at all, and he even felt slightly embarrassed. However, this was naturally not the time for him to feel embarrassed. He took a few steps with Luo Fan and arrived at a pavilion. Luo Fan raised his head and noticed that there were 3 large words written in cloud seal script on the pavilion. Scripture Pavilion. These 3 large words seemed to be composed of a variety of strokes, but in fact it contained an infinite number of runes. These runes were densely packed and were as fine as dust. They piled up into strokes that formed these 3 large words. The runes inside these large words were not motionless, but were intertwining and circulating, constantly in a state of movement. It was as if they were constantly evolving some kind of mystery, deducing some kind of mystery. With just one glance, Luo Fan saw through the mystery of these 3 words. It was a formation that possessed all kinds of incredible power. This formation was not triggered, but once it was triggered, it could display a supreme power that could destroy the heavens and the earth. It could erase all living beings and all matter that touched this formation. So that's how it is. This method is really wonderful. After Luo Fan understood the function of these 3 words, he couldn't help but inwardly exclaim in admiration. Looking around, he discovered the situation in the surrounding buildings that he had not noticed before. In fact, almost every building had its own name, and these names were all like the Scripture Pavilion. The mysterious rune formation was compressed into its name. The entire building seemed to have no defense at all, and there was not even the slightest restriction formation. However, upon closer inspection, one would realize how strong the defense of this building was. After the old Taoist made his decision, his emotions had gradually calmed down, and he had the time to discover other things. At this moment, he discovered that Luo Fan had noticed the secret of the name Scripture Pavilion. He smiled and said, "Fellow, you must be joking. Although my cultivation is not successful, I still have some reputation in the heavenly court. If I don't put up such a defense, I'm afraid that one day, when I finish cultivating, the entire cave abode will be emptied. You're too modest." Luo Fan smiled faintly and said one sentence. Although this old Taoist was not too strong compared to him, he was definitely a peak existence in the heavenly court. How could he not be successful, as he said? If not for the fact that he was the strongest existence in the heavenly court, why would Luo Fan come to him? The old Taoist smiled. He knew that Luo Fan had no intention of being polite. With a wave of the horsetail whisk in his hand, he opened the formation, opened the door, and brought Luo Fan into the Scripture Pavilion. As soon as they entered, there were rows of wooden shelves. There were all kinds of information carriers on these shelves. Some were bee skins, some were bamboo pieces, some were jade slips, some were tortoise shells, some were stone slabs, and so on. Almost all the information and writing materials in history were contained within. The entire Scripture Pavilion was filled with a solemn atmosphere. There were even faint chanting sounds coming from the various information carriers. If one looked closely, one could even see that there were all kinds of symbols occasionally flashing on the information carriers. With just a glance, Luo Fan knew that the information carriers contained countless mysterious cultivation methods, spells, and sayings of the great Tao. This was the only way such a phenomenon could appear. The old Taoist said, "There are a total of 183,573 scrolls of scriptures here. Among them are cultivation methods, divine arts, and the words of the ancient saints that describe the great Tao realms. This humble Taoist has painstakingly collected them over the past hundreds of thousands of years. My fundamental cultivation method was comprehended from these 183,573 scriptures." With that, the old Taoist waved his horsetail whisk again. In the center of a wooden shelf in the deepest part of the Scripture Pavilion, there was a palm-sized bronze piece. It turned into a green light and instantly arrived in the old Taoist's hand. There were some rust spots on the bronze piece. It looked like it had been buried underground for tens of millions of years. It was very simple, and there was no phenomenon. However, when Luo Fan saw this bronze piece, he immediately understood that this bronze piece was the thing that the old Taoist cared about the most in the entire Scripture Pavilion. It was also very likely that the cultivation method that the old Taoist had created was recorded in it, because this bronze piece was a type of innate copper marrow. It had been refined through tens of millions of steps and contained countless talismans before it was formed into a magic artifact. It was a miraculous magic artifact that only recorded information and had no other functions. How could the old Taoist not care about information that was recorded with such a magic artifact? The old Taoist rubbed the bronze piece for a long time. Then, he gritted his teeth and handed the bronze piece to Luo Fan. This poor Taoist cultivation technique is inside. Even though there are various descriptions of how to refine all heaven chi since the ancient times, all of them are extremely mysterious, and there aren't any that are truly feasible. Even though my cultivation method can allow me to refine all heaven chi, it's an accidental comprehension that can't be expressed in words. I can only try my best to record the process in detail within this bronze Jew. Fellow Taoist ability is 100 times stronger than mine. So long as you comprehend all of these scriptures together, you'll definitely know how to refine all heaven chi. Luo Fan nodded and casually received the bronze piece that was called a bronze Jew. He said, "Since it's like that, then I'm afraid I'll have to disturb the Scripture Pavilion for a period of time." The old Taoist nodded and said, "Feel free to do as you please. If you need anything, feel free to look for me at any time." As he spoke, he bowed and left. When he saw the old Taoist leave, Luo Fan issued a command in his heart before he raised his hand and pointed forward. Countless talismans flashed into appearance out of thin air, and they instantly enveloped the entire scripture pavilion. After they enveloped the scripture pavilion, the talismans condensed slightly to form numerous spheres that completely enveloped every single talisman in the pavilion. They circulated ceaselessly, recombined ceaselessly, and connected ceaselessly. They revealed various indescribable profundities of the Grand Tao, and it seemed as if some sort of unbelievable change was occurring. Chapter 587, Tai Ching. Chapter 627, when these runes left the information carriers, they underwent a huge change. Within the range of every rune, there was a strange existence that seemed real and illusory. It was completely made of runes, and it was the same as the information carriers they had enveloped before. It was as if these runes had copied the information carriers through some strange and mysterious method. Luo Fan casually made a grabbing motion, and the countless runes fell into his hand. He gently collected them and stored them into his Niwen palace. With a turn, it collapsed with a loud bang, and then suddenly reformed into a huge room. The layout was exactly the same as the inside of the scripture depository, without any difference. This method was actually Luo Fan's own mysterious method. He used the inexplicable runes to penetrate deep into the information carrier inside the scripture depository pavilion, and then completely obtained and copied the information inside the carrier, directly incorporating it into his own body. It could be said to be an alternative reading method. Reading the infinite information in the information carriers with this method naturally wouldn't be able to completely understand the infinite information in one go, but it could greatly shorten the process of reading. It was even to the extent that he only needed a thought to be able to easily put all the information in a certain information carrier into his own memory. And to the greatest extent, he would be able to remove all the process other than comprehension. Moreover, the most important thing was that in this way, Luo Fan didn't need to stay in the scripture pavilion for too long. After all, although the scripture pavilion was in the heavenly court, it was also in the heavenly realm. However, the flow of time in the heavenly realm was more than 365 times slower than the outside world. A day in the heavenly realm was equivalent to a year in the outside world. Such a slow flow of time was naturally unacceptable to Luo Fan, whose time was extremely precious. Not to mention that he wanted to see the mysterious person who could travel through space after 1,000 years. Just the fact that he wanted to use the fastest time to comprehend how to refine the Daluo Qi and comprehend the secrets of the Daluo Qi made it impossible for him to waste too much time in the scripture pavilion in the heavenly realm. After doing all this, Luo Fan did not start to comprehend the endless information that had been stored in his Niwen palace. Instead, he put the bronze plate in his hand into his sleeve and made a grabbing motion in the air. Countless runes appeared out of thin air and instantly penetrated deep into the void, forming an indescribable connection with some indescribable existence in the unseen world. It triggered some indescribable power and descended into the void through some mysterious channel. As the power descended, this part of the void suddenly collapsed. Countless runes appeared in the void. The complexity of these runes was definitely beyond the limit of what any creature in this realm could comprehend. After these runes appeared, they began to crazily revolve like countless tiny tadpoles. They twisted and changed, collapsing and combining. In the blink of an eye, they formed a 3-zhang tall rune gate. This rune gate was simple and profound, as if it had been formed naturally in the void, as if it had been standing in the void since ancient times. Within the gate, countless runes interweaved, forming a light screen that covered the gate. It made it impossible for people to see what kind of world lay behind the gate. However, there was a faint heat coming from the door. The heat was faintly discernible, but it caused the temperature of the entire scripture pavilion to rise at a perceptible rate. Luo Fan smiled, lifted his foot, and stepped into the gate. In an instant, he felt time and space change, and even time itself became chaotic. It seemed like only a moment had passed, but it also seemed like millions of years had passed. The surrounding space flowed crazily like a spark, changing wildly. It was as if he had traversed millions of worlds and millions of spaces in this period of time. By the time Luo Fan returned to his senses, he had already left the scripture pavilion and appeared in a place that he was familiar with. I didn't expect to have such a strong reaction after leaving the heavenly realm. If I didn't have some understanding of the rune formation used to open up the heavenly realm, I might have been injured here. Luo Fan sighed inwardly, and in his heart, he had a deeper understanding of the array formation composed of 500 billion runes. At this moment, Luo Fan was on a formation formed by 500 billion runes, which was a few dozen kilometers above the core of the sun. At this location, the surrounding temperature was more than 10 million degrees, and the surrounding heat was enough to obliterate everything. With a thought, Luo Fan made a grabbing motion, and countless runes rushed out of his hand, directly forming a platform in the void. The platform was in the shape of a pyramid, 100 feet high, and the top of the platform had a radius of 10 feet. The entire platform was completely formed by the accumulation of runes. Every rune was extremely dense, and even if a golden core did not use various techniques to strengthen their eyesight, they would not be able to discover that it was formed by runes. The density of these runes could be imagined. After the formation of the platform, an almost endless attractive force suddenly appeared out of thin air. The surrounding almost endless flames and endless heat, under the effect of this attractive force, frantically poured into the platform. With the input of the flames and heat, the platform changed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Like a soil embryo being tempered into bricks and tiles, graphite into diamonds, it became more and more dense, and there was an indestructible aura gradually exuding, becoming stronger and stronger. Seeing this, Luo Fan smiled slightly, lifted his foot, and instantly arrived on the platform. As soon as he set foot on the platform, the heat and flames that originally filled his body seemed to have never appeared and were completely isolated in an instant. There was only an indescribable brightness around him, making him feel as if he was bathing in the morning light, and only felt an indescribable comfort surging up his heart. Lifting his hand and pointing down, a futon appeared out of thin air on the platform below. Sitting on the futon, Luo Fan slowly closed his eyes. The moment he closed his eyes, the platform formed by runes suddenly shook, and endless runes poured out, completely shrouding Luo Fan, who was sitting cross-legged on the platform like a fog, so that the people outside could only see the base of a pyramid and a cloud of golden rune smoke overlapping, but they could no longer see what was on the top of the platform. With the appearance of the rune smoke, the extremely terrifying attractive force of the pyramid platform skyrocketed again. In an instant, a medium-sized whirlpool was formed. Because the heat and flames were absorbed by the pyramid platform, the temperature around the platform became much lower than other locations. The drop in temperature also caused the brightness of this location to be slightly dimmer than other locations. From afar, it looked as if a dark spot had suddenly appeared there, or an additional scar. As time passed, the flames and heat that the platform absorbed increased, and as the power within the platform increased, it gradually produced various powers that Luo Fan had set up. Among them, the most important power was that the speed at which time flowed at the top of the platform, which was shrouded by the rune smoke, began to gradually change. This change caused the flow of time in the rune smoke to become faster and faster. On the first day, it became twice as fast. On the second day, it became 10 times as fast. On the third day, it became more than 100 times as fast. On the fourth day, the speed at which time flowed had increased by more than 1,000 times as fast as the outside world. In the end, the speed at which time flowed had reached 3,650 times as fast as the outside world before it finally stopped and stabilized. At that time, a full 9 days had passed since Luo Fan had constructed this pyramid platform. By then, The area around the platform that had darkened had increased to a radius of 10,000 miles. The affected area had even affected the surface of the sun. Even people on Earth, who needed 8 minutes to travel at the speed of light, could see that there seemed to be a small black dot on the sun from this. It could be seen how much flames and heat the pyramid platform had absorbed. Speeding up the flow of time to 3,600 times was not a difficult task for Luo Fan. The reason why he chose to build a pyramid platform and spend 9 days and 9 nights to accelerate it was because the nature of the two methods was different. If Luo Fan used his ability to accelerate the flow of time, even if he used a formation to absorb energy from the outside world to construct it, he would still need to expend a lot of energy to maintain it. Even though it was not much, it still required Luo Fan to divert some of his attention. However, this pyramid platform was different. Although it was also a mysterious existence similar to a formation, its initial structure did not require Luo Fan to expend any effort to maintain. Instead, it only required the existence of flames and heat in the sun to naturally activate the function of isolating the platform from the outside world. Although the power to change the flow of time was set by Luo Fan at the beginning of the construction of the platform, its direct source was the result of the natural evolution of the pyramid platform. It could be said that accelerating the flow of time was just an inevitable change that would happen after the platform absorbed a certain amount of flames and coolness. It was fundamentally different from directly constructing a space-time formation. Perhaps it could be described with the concept from Luo Fan's previous life. Luo Fan directly constructed a space-time formation to accelerate the flow of time, as if he had used his hands to build a complicated building with some building blocks. By accelerating the flow of time with this pyramid platform, it was similar to Luo Fan directly constructing some industrial foundations and artificial intelligence foundations, so that mature artificial intelligence could naturally be developed on these foundations, and robots that could build that kind of building with building blocks would be developed. Then, the robots would build that kind of complex building. The results of these two methods were naturally the same. They were both building the kind of building with building blocks. However, the former method still required Luo Fan's attention and careful inspection at all times to prevent the building from collapsing or disintegrating due to the influence of external factors. To prevent the building from being destroyed. The latter method did not require Luo Fan to do anything at all. If there were any changes to the building, the robots would deal with it. This pyramid platform was like the latter method. Obviously, the latter method could almost be said to be making a mountain out of a molehill. It would naturally take a lot of time to complicate a simple problem by 1,000 times. That was why it would take as long as 9 days and 9 nights to accelerate the flow of time to the extent that Luo Fan needed. As the pyramid platform continued to change, Luo Fan did not care at all. He focused all his attention on the bronze piece that the old Taoists called the bronze Jew. As he concentrated his mind, the mysteries hidden inside the bronze piece appeared in front of him without reservation. When the bronze piece was activated, the infinite information contained in it instantly gushed out in the form of light and shadow, condensing into pieces of light and shadow in front of Luo Fan. These light and shadow were strange. Some were all kinds of living creatures, some were all kinds of dead things, and some were all kinds of strange worlds. Luo Fan's eyes narrowed. He instantly knew that these light and shadow were all kinds of words, runes, spells, and magic that were transformed through various mysterious methods. With a slight thought, he casually flicked the light and shadow, and the light and shadow began to change as his fingers moved. With a tap of his finger, the light and shadow suddenly expanded, revealing countless words, runes, and even all kinds of strange and complicated patterns. With another tap, the words and patterns returned to their original appearance. The same changes occurred when he tapped the same point in other places. After a few times, Luo Fan understood the effect of this bronze Jew. He praised the old Taoist's wonderful idea. Such a way of storing information was similar to the so-called touchscreen computers of the future. In fact, because it was a holographic effect, it was even more exquisite and advanced than the touchscreen computers of the future. After praising this kind of information storage method, Luo Fan focused his mind on the information recorded. With a few taps, Luo Fan found the beginning of the information and began to read it from beginning to end. In an instant, the light and shadow kept changing. Countless words, runes, and patterns rushed into Luo Fan's eyes like a torrent. In the blink of an eye, they were transformed into Luo Fan's memory and were completely remembered by Luo Fan. The Tai Ching Dao Jing was the name of this cultivation method. This person calls himself Li Er, and the cultivation method he practices is the Tai Ching Dao Jing. It seems that he has some kind of relationship with Li Er in ancient times. Could he be Lao Dan of the pre-Qin dynasty? Seeing the name of the cultivation method, Luo Fan could not help but feel excited. However, it was only a slight movement. Whether this person was Lao Dan or not, it had nothing to do with him. Whether this person was Lao Dan or not, it would not affect him at all. Under such circumstances, how could he pay too much attention to it? The reason why he thought of it at this moment was that the name had evoked his distant memory. This cultivation method was the summary of the old Taoist lifetime cultivation. It contained all the mysteries of his cultivation. To the old Taoist, this cultivation method was the most precious existence. At the beginning of this cultivation method, there was a passage of words that Luo Fan was very familiar with. The Tao can be Tao, the Tao cannot be Tao, the name can be named, the name cannot be named. Apart from a few words, it was almost exactly the same as the Tai Ching Dao Jing that had been widely circulated on Earth for thousands of years. This Li Er must have a very close relationship with Lao Dan of the pre-Qin dynasty. It is even possible that Lao Dan is the incarnation of this Li Er. Seeing these words, Luo Fan instantly had such a thought in his mind. However, it was just a thought. As mentioned before, it did not matter to him whether it was Lao Dan or not. Luo Fan did not take it lightly, just because these words are almost exactly the same as the Tai Ching Dao Jing. Instead, he carefully analyzed and pondered over every word, trying to find the mysteries of cultivation contained in it. Through this analysis, he discovered that these words that seemed to be exactly the same as the Tai Ching Dao Jing indeed contained countless mysteries that the Tai Ching Dao Jing did not. The Chinese language was broad and profound. As long as there was a slight difference in the order, a slight difference in the broken words, a few more words, or a few less words, the meaning would be completely different from before. The meaning contained in the words might even be earth-shattering. This was the case for the Tai Ching Dao Jing and the Tai Ching Dao Jing. In terms of the words, the difference between the two was extremely small. However, it was this small difference that made the Tai Ching Dao Jing an extremely profound cultivation method, while the Tai Ching Dao Jing was just a secular article. After carefully analyzing the general outline of the text for a long time, Luo Fan finally had a general understanding of Li Er's concept of cultivation. Combined with the cultivation method that he saw through when he checked Li Er's cultivation base, he vaguely understood the direction that Li Er was working hard to cultivate the Dao Yuo Qi. Of course, he could only see the direction that Li Er was working hard in. It was naturally not easy to see how Li Er actually cultivated it. As he continued to read, the specific cultivation process of the Tai Ching Dao Jing from the beginning to the cultivation of the leakless gold core was presented in front of Luo Fan without reservation. The entire cultivation process was extremely realistic and detailed. Almost anyone who followed the description of the scripture could at least become a golden core perfected being. In fact, as long as one's perception was good enough, it would not be difficult to cultivate a leakless golden core and obtain longevity. This specific cultivation method was naturally different from the cultivation method that Luo Fan saw from the old Taoist cultivation base. There were some detours in it, but because of these detours, he obtained a lot of unexpected power. Compared to the cultivation method that Luo Fan saw, although the cultivation speed was slower, it was not a mistake. In fact, it could even be classified as perfect. Moreover, at the end of this cultivation method, there was a part of the cultivation method that Luo Fan could not see or deduce. These cultivation methods were not considered profound, but they contained a lot of content that Luo Fan could not understand. They were almost completely idealistic. Chapter 588. Chapter 628. Innate golden core. After roughly reading through the entire scripture, Luo Fan closed his eyes and pondered quietly. At the same time, he started to read through the scriptures in the scripture pavilion. There were over 180,000 scriptures in the scripture pavilion, and the number of words in each scripture varied. Some had hundreds of millions of words, while others only had a few hundred words. With more than 180,000 scriptures added together, it was unknown how many billions of words there were. Even with Luo Fan's ability, it was impossible for him to completely understand these scriptures in a short period of time and know that there was a karmic connection between these scriptures and Li Er's cultivation method. Therefore, Luo Fan could only slowly and carefully analyze, compare, deduce, and judge. Time passed quickly during this process. In the blink of an eye, 100 years had passed. Compared to Luo Fan, who was standing on the platform of the pyramid, these 100 years of time were an entire 365,000 years. Even for Luo Fan, this was not a short period of time. At this time, amidst the 365,000 lights, Luo Fan did not begin to cultivate the so-called leakless golden core technique. Instead, he put all his spirit and heart into deducing the essence of the 5 Qis unification. Normally speaking, a cultivation method, especially a leakless golden core cultivation method, should not be a secret to Luo Fan. In reality, Luo Fan had only spent a few years to clearly understand all the descriptions of the leakless golden core in the scriptures. His understanding of the leakless golden core had even reached a level that no cultivator in the entire heavenly realm could compare to. However, above the leakless golden core, there were still the transitional realms of the 3 flowers converged and 5 Qis condensed. These transitional realms led to the so-called Holy Road, which was a transition that led to the profundities of the Daoyuo realm. This was an extremely difficult problem for Luo Fan, who didn't have the slightest understanding of the profundities of the Daoyuo realm. It was precisely because of this that Luo Fan had spent most of his time during these 365,000 years of time on comprehending the profundities of the all-heaven realm. The reason why it took so much time was because most of the over 180,000 scrolls of scriptures had descriptions of the 3 flowers at one's prominence and the 5 Qis unification. However, just as Li Er had said, there was no specific method for the 3 flowers converging and 5 Qis unifying. All the descriptions were just trying their best to describe a mystery that couldn't be described with words, using all kinds of obscure, mysterious, and illusory words. It could be said that every single scripture was related to the true profundities of the golden immortal realm, but most of them were merely their own feelings. It was practically impossible for anyone to find the true secrets of the golden immortal realm from these descriptions, and it was the same for Luo Fan. That was why he needed to spend 365,000 years to slowly comprehend it. On this day, Luo Fan, who was on the platform, slowly opened his eyes. Countless complicated characters, diagrams, and runes poured down from his eyes, and in the blink of an eye, they disappeared without a trace. As expected, it's almost impossible to comprehend the profundities of the golden immortal realm by relying on this reverse inference method. Luo Fan sighed to himself. The 365,000 years of hard work did not really achieve his goal of allowing him to truly comprehend the specifics, refine the qi of the golden immortal realm, and truly comprehend the profundities of the golden immortal realm. However, this did not mean that he did not gain anything at all. On the contrary, it could even be said that the gains were extremely great. It allowed him to almost reach an unfathomable level of understanding towards the cultivation system of the Earth's universe. It even made him feel that the only people who had a deeper understanding of the cultivation system of the Earth's universe than him were the almighty mediums or sages of the legends who had opened up heavenly realms. Although this feeling was slightly arrogant. However, this arrogance was not without foundation. Instead, It was the result of incessant meditation over a period of 365,000 years. If 365,000 years of constant meditation still couldn't make Luo Fan so confident, then it could be said that his efforts over the past 360,000 years could basically be regarded as a dog's effort. With a wave of his hand, tens of millions of words, runes, and countless patterns appeared out of thin air, and they were arranged in front of him to form a large, complicated, and profound cultivation method. Although this cultivation method did not have a specific cultivation method that could allow one to refine the chi of the Golden Immortal Realm, it had already done everything that Luo Fan could do to minimize the difficulty of refining the chi of the Golden Immortal Realm. At the very least, compared to the 180,000 scriptures in Li Er's scripture depository and the supreme, pure Tao Te Ching that Li Er cultivated, the difficulty was reduced by many times. It could be said that if such a cultivation method was placed in the heavenly realm, it would be enough to be worshipped by all the cultivators in the entire heavenly realm, and they would treat Luo Fan, who created this cultivation method, as a legendary sage. Luo Fan looked at this cultivation method with a rather dissatisfied look on his face. However, he knew that this was the limit of what he could do. If he had already attained the Tao fruit of the Golden Immortal Realm and understood the profundities of the Golden Immortal Realm, then he would naturally be able to easily create a cultivation method that pointed directly to the chi of the Golden Immortal Realm. However, since he hadn't attained it, then no matter how hard he tried to deduce and search, he could only get close to it, and it was impossible for him to achieve it. Understanding this, Luo Fan casually clapped his hands and extinguished the scripture before him. He extinguished the scripture in front of him, and with a thought, the cultivation that had gathered in his body out of thin air dissipated with a bang, allowing his body to return to its purest and most basic state. In this state, there was no power or cultivation, but it was still 100 times or even 100 times stronger than the mortals on Earth. After all, the body that Luo Fan condensed was the most authentic, innate Tao constitution, and it was naturally not something that a human body born after birth could compare to. After dispersing the cultivation in his body, Luo Fan felt a wave of indescribable exhaustion. Even the circulation of his thoughts seemed to have suffered a peerlessly strong restraint, causing him to feel as if every circulation of his thoughts was carrying a weight of 1 trillion tons, and it felt extremely uncomfortable and uncomfortable. Luo Fan had expected this a long time ago, and he knew that it was because this body was unable to endure a single thought from him. Thus, he didn't hesitate at all and immediately started cultivating according to the cultivation method that he'd comprehended in the past 365,000 years. With Luo Fan's understanding of this cultivation method, the speed of his cultivation was obvious. In an instant, boundless heat and flames were transformed into the purest and most condensed innate origin energy by the pyramid platform, and it swiftly condensed towards him. It was absorbed by the suction force produced by the circulation of the cultivation method, and then it swiftly charged into his body before transforming into innate origin energy through some mysterious and indescribable transformation. As it circulated ceaselessly, it gradually changed his body and soul. The cultivation foundation of the innate Taoism aptitude was hundreds of times higher than that of an ordinary person. The cultivation of the Jin Dan was naturally not something that the cultivation of an ordinary person's body could compare with. In just a few dozen breaths, Luo Fan directly crossed the first few realms of the Jin Dan and directly cultivated to the ethereal opening realm. In just a few dozen breaths, he cultivated the Yin spirit and entered the netherworld fixation realm. Then, the pyramid platform naturally produced countless changes, and it madly absorbed the flames and heat from the outside world. Then, through various transformations, it was transformed into countless lightning bolts, which gathered at the top of the platform and crazily struck towards Luo Fan. The top of Luo Fan's head shook, and there was a physical body of Luo Fan that emitted an extremely Yin aura rushing out from the top of his head, and it floated in the midst of the countless lightning bolts. The countless lightning bolts were drawn by this, and they overwhelmingly struck towards Luo Fan's body that emitted an extremely Yin aura. This physical body that emitted an extremely Yin aura was the Yin spirit that Luo Fan had cultivated after reaching the netherworld fixation realm. It could also be said that it was another body that carried his divine soul. With his innate Taoism aptitude, his divine soul was originally balanced between Yin and Yang, unlike ordinary people who were born with Yin Qi. The reason why he appeared to be pure Yin at this moment was because the cultivation method he cultivated split Yin and Yang in the process of cultivation, allowing his innate Taoism aptitude to cultivate such a pure Yin spirit. The pyramid platform was above the sun's core, and the surrounding energy was endless. Naturally, the lightning that was transformed was also endless. The power of the lightning was so strong that it surpassed that of Earth and even the heavenly realm. In fact, as long as Luo Fan was willing, it could even be compared to the lightning of the primordial world. Under such circumstances, the lightning's ability to temper the Yin spirit had reached an unimaginable level. Even all the perfected Jindan in the heavenly realm who had cultivated the Yang spirit would not be able to withstand such powerful lightning. They would die in the lightning, and their souls would dissipate. However, such lightning was nothing to Luo Fan, who had spent 365,000 years cultivating to create this cultivation method. In the endless lightning, the Yin Qi that the Yin spirit carried was gradually eliminated, and a bit of pure Yang aura gradually emitted from the Yin spirit. A feeling that it was becoming more and more real appeared on the Yin spirit, making it seem as if it was gradually walking out of nothingness, gradually turning into an existence that was more real than any existence in the world. This feeling of realism was fundamentally different from the physical form that the Yin spirit had taken when it had appeared. Previously, it was just a kind of texture that had been condensed to a certain limit, condensing the original power of nothingness into a form that was similar to a solid. In essence, it was still the power of nothingness. But at this moment, the feeling of realism was completely reversing this nothingness, eliminating it, turning it into reality, and truly turning the illusory Yin spirit into an indelible, real existence. The difference in the nature of the two could be seen at a glance. The pyramid platform was constantly attracting the inexhaustible heat and flames in the surroundings, constantly transforming most of the heat and flames into pure and powerful thunderbolts that covered the sky and covered Luo Fan's Yin god. In the lightning, Yin and Yang flowed, and the mystery of the transformation between reality and illusion was gradually revealed to Luo Fan. All sorts of insights that were different from the ones he had when he obtained the Tao fruit in the primordial world filled his mind and mind. It allowed him to gradually understand why there was such a cultivation process where his soul carried Yin Qi and used lightning to expel the Yin Qi and transform it into pure Yang. Only by understanding Yin and Yang, reality and illusion, could one comprehend eternity, form a golden core, and even form a leakless golden core. As this enlightenment appeared, the void shook, and all the remaining Yin Qi in the Yin spirit dissipated. The feeling of realism that the Yin spirit exuded reached its limit in an instant. However, in an instant, Luo Fan had already broken through the meditation realm and become a Yang spirit. After the Yang spirit was completed, with a casual grab, countless thunderbolts on the platform instantly condensed into a ball of thunder in front of him. The Yang spirit opened its mouth and sucked it into its body. With a loud bang, the aura of the Yang spirit instantly increased by more than 100 times. Then, the Yang spirit sank down and sank back into Luo Fan's body. As the Yang spirit entered his body, the innate true essence in Luo Fan's body began to circulate. The entire pyramid platform no longer turned the flames and heat absorbed from the outside into lightning. Instead, it turned into innate Qi again and crazily surged toward Luo Fan. It was absorbed into his body, refined into innate true essence, and integrated into the innate true essence circulation system, allowing the innate true essence to continue to grow. During this process, his body was also changing slightly. In the process of continuous improvement, a sense of perfection was gradually born. At this time, his yang spirit was also constantly shaking, gradually merging with the innate true essence. Waves of strange power continued to flow between the yang spirit and the innate true essence through this inexplicable combination. As this strange power flowed, the yang spirit gradually became illusory. This kind of illusory was not an illusory existence, but every single part of the yang spirit began to move violently. This kind of movement made the entire yang spirit seem to be gradually decomposing and constantly collapsing. This process lasted for a full 10 years before there was any change. After 10 years, Luo Fan's yang spirit had completely collapsed into a strange ball of light. It was like a ball, slowly rotating in his Niwen palace. During this process, his innate true essence had also become completely different from before. Although it was still innate true essence, it carried an extremely mysterious aura. As it circulated, it even pulled the surrounding space-time, causing the surrounding space-time to undergo some strange changes with the circulation of the innate true essence. It seemed to be distorted, but also seemed to be speeding up and also seemed to be slowing down. Such a change was because the innate true origin had become connected with some sort of space-time law during the past 10 years. As it circulated, it naturally caused the laws to change, causing space-time to change along with it. One day after 10 years, the strange ball of light formed by the yang spirit and the innate true essence that was linked with some kind of space-time rule suddenly stopped all changes. At this moment, Luo Fan's figure seemed to be frozen in the void, as if he had completely merged with space-time. He had become a shadow engraved in the void, giving off a strange aura that could not be worn down by thousands of tribulations. At this moment, Luo Fan had an inexplicable understanding. The gold core was about to be formed. The moment this thought flashed through his mind, the inside of his body underwent an earth-shaking change. The innate true essence rushed upwards, and the ball of light formed by the yang spirit suddenly sank down, rushing out of the ancestral orifice Niwen, and collided with the innate true essence in his chest. In an instant, an earth-shaking thunderous sound came from within Luo Fan's body. This thunderous sound was like it came from the great Tao. It was unstoppable and unstoppable. It directly penetrated the surrounding formation mist, penetrated the platform of the pyramid, passed through the boundless heat and flames, and entered the huge formation below, and spread out beyond the sun. At this moment, all the creatures in the entire heavenly realm suddenly heard a thunderous sound in the sky, as if the world had been opened. The entire heavenly realm seemed to be trembling and shaking under this thunderous sound. However, none of the living beings who heard this thunderclap felt fear, not even the slightest trace of fear. Instead, they felt an indescribable joy, and they faintly felt as if a new era was slowly descending upon them. The thunderous sound even passed through a distance that even light needed 8 minutes to travel and reach the extremely distant Earth, so that all the creatures on Earth could hear this sound. However, compared to the creatures in the heavenly realm, the creatures on Earth were even more ignorant. Most of them thought that it was just a sudden thunderbolt in a clear sky, and only a very small number of creatures with the root of wisdom could sense the abnormality of the thunderous sound, and sense the inexplicable joy that the thunderous sound brought to all living beings. After the thunderous sound, endless flames and heat gathered in the air above the golden platform, turning into an endless storm of dragons and tigers that flowed in the air. It gave off an indescribable might, and the entire sun seemed to be trembling slightly under its might. The strange phenomenon of the storm of dragons and tigers covered an area with a circumference of 10,000 li. Its powerful might even cause the flames and heat within a circumference of 1 million li to fluctuate abnormally, causing a rather obvious vortex to form on the surface of the sun. Even the distant Earth could see that something was wrong with the sun. This scene clearly showed that Luo Fan had attained his gold core. The strange phenomenon and might of attaining his gold core were tens of thousands of times more powerful than when Gooden attained his gold core. The difference was like the difference between heaven and earth. At this moment, as Luo Fan trembled, the Yang's soul and innate true origin completely disappeared. What replaced them was a golden pill that was the size of a fist. It constantly emitted a natural and eternal aura, and it slowly rotated. Every time the golden pill rotated, it would attract the endless, innate origin chi in the surroundings to surge towards it, and it also caused Luo Fan's body to undergo some kind of extremely profound transformation. He became more intimate with the world, and he even faintly formed some kind of connection with the various rules. It seemed like the process of controlling origin chi, using power, and activating the rules became easier and easier. Even the toughness of his body became stronger at an unimaginable speed during this process. Chapter 589. The essence of leakless this golden core was formed on the basis of innate vitality. It was fundamentally different from all the golden core immortals in the heavenly realm, even those who had cultivated the leakless golden core. In terms of power, it was at least 100,000 times stronger than the golden core of an ordinary golden core immortal. This level of power had already reached the peak of the individual immortal realm. Although it was still not comparable to the realm of true immortal, it was not too far away. It could be said that if an innate deity who had reached the realm of true immortality in the untainted land fought with a creature who had formed the primordial gold core, the loser would most likely be the innate deity instead of the primordial gold core immortal. In addition to the difference in power, the innate gold core had a huge advantage over the acquired golden core. That was, the innate gold core had no limit on its lifespan. The acquired golden core could only live for 3,000 years in the outside world. Even in the heavenly realm, which was blessed by nature, one could only live for 300,000 years. It was not longevity at all. The reason was that the foundation of the acquired golden core was the chi of heaven and earth. Because it belonged to the acquired golden core, there was no way to replenish the lost lifespan. One day, one's lifespan would be used up. However, the innate gold core did not have all these disadvantages. The foundation of the innate gold core was the innate vitality. The benefits of innate natural energy to life were far greater than that of acquired natural energy. If a living being breathed in and bathed in the innate natural energy all the time, the source of his life, which had been depleted with the passage of time, would always be replenished by the innate natural energy, and the source of his life would always be in a perfect state. In other words, as long as a living being bathed in the innate natural energy, he would never die of old age. Even bathing in the innate vitality had such benefits. With the help of the innate vitality to cultivate the golden core and transform the essence of life, how could one die of old age? How could there be a limit to one's lifespan? The innate gold core condensed by the innate vitality had such a terrifying power. This was completely beyond Luo Fan's expectation. In ancient times, the world was full of innate vitality, so the golden core that was cultivated must be of this level. If that's the case, then maybe there really was a sage on Earth. Luo Fan thought to himself, and the light in his eyes gradually brightened. Originally, Luo Fan already understood that there must have been some kind of earth-shattering existence in the ancient times when there was such a boundless heavenly realm existence. This kind of great divine ability might be the legendary saint, or maybe not. However, he had no idea how these great divinities and sages cultivated. After all, the cultivation methods of the cultivators in the heavenly realms on earth were just too inferior in his eyes. It was almost impossible for them to cultivate to the level of cultivation that his main body possessed, let alone saints who were 2 levels higher than him. Because of this doubt, he faintly felt that there seemed to be a hidden hand controlling the Earth's universe, and some kind of conspiracy was taking place. Now that he knew that according to the various cultivation methods left on Earth, and the heavenly realms, one could cultivate such an innate gold core. And after cultivating a leakless gold core, he might even have more incredible divine sense. And it was not impossible to reach the legendary sage realm. Just now, he felt that he seemed to have lifted a little of the dark curtain hidden behind the entire Earth's universe. The innate gold core is more than 100,000 times stronger than the ordinary gold core. It is not an exaggeration to say that this leakless gold core is hundreds of thousands or even millions of times stronger than the ordinary leakless gold core. In this way, cultivating a leakless gold core may be similar to attaining the Tai Tao fruit. In this way, the next step of the 3 flowers at one's prominence and the 5 Qis collecting in mind may really be the same as attaining the Daluo Dao fruit. Luo Fan secretly compared the gold core cultivation method with his own cultivation of the Tao fruit, and gradually came to such a conclusion. With this conclusion, he no longer had any doubts as to why Li Er couldn't cultivate 5 strands of Daluo Qi. His foundation was completely wrong. It's already a blessing that he was able to cultivate 2 strands of Daluo Qi. If I want to cultivate more Qi of Daluo, I am afraid that the effort needed is millions of times more than that of ordinary cultivators. It can be said that it is almost impossible. All kinds of thoughts changed in his mind, and after a long time, he suppressed them one by one. Since this method is so powerful, even if I have to give up this idea, I must cultivate this method. Luo Fan thought to himself. With this thought, he closed his eyes again and operated the innate gold core in his body. He began to rotate it according to the cultivation method that he had comprehended. As the gold core rotated, endless innate essence frantically gathered towards the gold core. Before he cultivated the gold core, the innate essence was an extremely suitable energy for Luo Fan. Although the innate true essence transformed from every bit of innate essence was reduced by 10 times, and the quality was also increased by 10 times, it was still at the same level after all. But now, after he cultivated the innate gold core, to him, the quality of the Xiantian Yuan Qi was already far worse than he could imagine. Almost millions of parts of essence could be transformed into one part of innate true essence. Of course, the quality of the innate true essence after he cultivated the gold core was also many times better than before. This was needless to say. Under such circumstances, the speed of Luo Fan's cultivation was more than 1,000,000 times slower than before. Originally, it would only take him 10 years to cultivate the innate gold core. Now, it would probably take at least hundreds of thousands or millions of years for him to improve further. After sensing the speed and slowly deducing the time needed for the process, Luo Fan could not help but frown. At such a speed, even if the pyramid platform could accelerate time 3,650 times faster than the outside world, by the time he reached the leakless gold core, it would probably be the time for the mysterious man to appear again. After thinking about it, he dismissed the idea of speeding up the flow of time on the pyramid platform again. With the ability of the pyramid platform, it was naturally possible to speed up the flow of time. However, if that was the case, it would consume too much energy. If the energy was used for cultivation, it might even speed up his cultivation. It could be said that the price-to-performance ratio was too low. Moreover, the commotion was too great. It would easily attract some unnecessary attention and might even cause unnecessary problems. It was not a good choice. In addition, according to what he had seen before, if he could cultivate the innate leakless gold core, it would not be a problem for him to suppress the mysterious man. He was not in a hurry to return to the primordial world, so he naturally did not choose such a method that might cause unnecessary problems. After thinking it through, Luo Fan closed his eyes again and began the long path of cultivation. Time passed by slowly. In the heavenly realm and on earth, due to the huge thunderbolt produced when Luo Fan cultivated the innate gold core, various inexplicable changes gradually occurred. Among them, because the living beings who could sense the thunderbolt were only cultivators, the changes on earth were only concentrated in the cultivation world. However, The changes in the heavenly realm were extremely huge. It affected every region of the heavenly realm and affected almost every living being. There were many changes in the heavenly realm and on earth. Every change was very subtle. It was difficult to describe them clearly with words. However, all the changes combined caused the various battles on earth and in the heavenly realm to become much less. It made all living beings look forward and wait in the depths of their hearts. As for what they were looking forward to, what they were waiting for, no living being could explain it clearly. They could only vaguely know that a change was about to happen. And when that change happened, it would even change the situation of the entire heavenly realm or the entire earth. In the process of such changes, time passed either quickly or slowly. Nearly 3 years had passed in the heavenly realm, and nearly 1,000 years had passed on earth. Finally, the pyramid platform above the sun's core changed. Nearly 1,000 years had passed on earth, but millions of years had passed in the area where the pyramid platform distorted time. During these millions of years, Luo Fan did not care about all the changes in the outside world. He only focused on cultivating the cultivation method he created. He operated the innate gold core, absorbed the innate origin chi, strengthened the gold core, and refined his body. After such a long period of time, Luo Fan's innate gold core had grown to its limit. It was like another sun in his acupuncture point. No one knew how many tens of thousands of miles it filled the entire acupuncture point, causing the entire acupuncture point to almost collapse from this huge innate gold core. At this moment, the amount of innate origin chi that was drawn by the Golden Dan was tens of thousands of times more than what it used to be. His body had also improved to an unimaginable level during these millions of years of refinement. In terms of strength and power, this body was still far inferior to his body in the untainted land. But it was also extremely powerful and had all kinds of incredible power. It even faintly merged with the great way of the Earth's universe. Every move it made could lead to endless changes in the universe, change the rules, distort time and space, and crack the stars. It could be said that after millions of years of refinement, the power that this body could exert in the Earth's universe even exceeded the power that Luo Fan's body could exert in the Earth's universe. This showed how incredible the innate gold core's effect on body refinement was. However, despite such a great change, Luo Fan still did not break through the innate gold core and become a leakless gold core. It was as if there was an invisible but extremely stable barrier between the gold core and the leakless gold core. It was even like a barrier between heaven and earth. No matter how hard he tried, he could not break through the barrier and turn the gold core into a leakless gold core. The leakless gold core is only equivalent to the primordial unity Tao fruit. With my cultivation at the peak of the primordial unity Tao fruit, it should be no problem for me to achieve the leakless gold core. Why is it so difficult to cultivate the leakless gold core? On this day, Luo Fan, who had tried for a long time but still could not break through the gold core and become a leakless gold core, finally stopped. He frowned and pondered. After millions of years of hard work, his understanding of the gold core cultivation system had reached a limit. After various experiments, he already knew that it was not his own problem that he could not cultivate the leakless gold core. It could be said that according to his cultivation and understanding, he should have cultivated the leakless gold core long ago. However, because of the lack of some external conditions, he had cultivated the gold core to such a huge size, but still could not achieve the leakless gold core. What is it that I am missing? It is impossible for the ancient practitioners not to cultivate the leakless gold core. Then there must be something that existed in the ancient times, but does not exist today. What is it? Luo Fan frowned and pondered. Even though he was already a primordial unity Tao fruit, his understanding of the earth and the universe was far less than that of the practitioners who had lived since the ancient times. Naturally, it was impossible for him to know how the ancient practitioners cultivated the leakless gold core. After thinking for a long time, suddenly a bolt of lightning flashed in his mind. A light appeared out of thin air. The primordial chi of chaos. Could it be that what I am missing is the primordial chi of chaos? Luo Fan's eyes lit up. During the period when the primordial chi of chaos existed, it was impossible for the world to be filled with primordial chi of chaos. For example, at this time, although the world was filled with the primordial chi of heaven and earth, there were definitely some places that had been sealed or some other reasons that left the primordial chi of chaos. According to Luo Fan's guess, in order to achieve the leakless gold core, one needed the primordial chi of chaos. Otherwise, the real essence in Lier's body would not appear to be close to the primordial chi. Therefore, when the primordial chi of chaos was achieved by the primordial chi of chaos, there must be a certain amount of the primordial chi of chaos remaining in the world. And it seemed that the only difference between the environment that Luo Fan was in and the environment of the primordial chi of chaos was the primordial chi of chaos. The more he thought about it, the more certain Luo Fan became. Since he had already thought of it, Luo Fan naturally would not be satisfied without trying. To condense the primordial chi of chaos might be a difficult and almost impossible task for many practitioners on Earth. But for Luo Fan, who was always accompanied by the primordial chi of chaos in the untainted land and could even further refine the primordial chi of chaos, it was not a problem at all. With a slight thought, he raised his hand and slapped it down. Hundreds of millions of runes rushed out of his hand and directly entered the pyramid platform below. The pyramid platform was originally constructed of runes. When the runes that Luo Fan slapped out of thin air rushed into the platform, they were like rivers flowing into the sea. They completely fused with the pyramid platform, becoming inseparable and difficult to distinguish. After the pyramid platform obtained the hundreds of millions of runes, it twisted wildly and circulated wildly. The entire pyramid platform seemed to have an incomparably huge force that kept colliding within it, wanting to completely collapse it. With this change, the rune smoke at the top of the pyramid platform also began to circulate and change. However, no matter how it circulated and changed, the flow of time within its range maintained an extremely stable state. It did not change at all because of the change. After a long time, the changes on the pyramid platform subsided. With this change, the entire pyramid platform suddenly expanded more than 10 times. There is also an incomparably desolate and unadorned aura coming from the pyramid platform. It was as if the pyramid platform had been tempered by hundreds of millions of years of time. Every rune and every brick seemed to be filled with endless vicissitudes of life and contained endless stories. With this change, the entire sun's core seemed to tremble slightly. Hundreds of thousands of long rivers of fire suddenly rushed out of the sun's core. In an instant, they crossed the distance of dozens of miles and directly rushed to the bottom of the pyramid platform. In an instant, the pyramid platform absorbed every drop of fire, as if it was a bottomless pit. No matter how much fire or how much power was poured into it, it could not be filled in the slightest. And at this moment, the endless innate vitality around Luo Fan's body suddenly disappeared. A faint aura of primal chaos gradually spread out. Strands of primal chaos suddenly seeped out of the platform below and gradually spread out, slowly filling up Luo Fan's body. Gradually, Luo Fan was bathed in the primal chaos. As the incomparably familiar primal chaos appeared around him, Luo Fan suddenly felt his body begin to tremble slightly. This trembling was completely out of his mind's control, completely out of his spirit's control. It was as if this body suddenly had its own thoughts and spirituality. And at the same time, the huge golden core in his acupuncture point also began to change in some inexplicable way. It was as if it had suddenly become completely different from before. An unprecedented vitality, an unprecedented liveliness emanated from the golden core. In an instant, Luo Fan knew that his guess was completely correct. The reason why he could not form a leakless golden core for such a long time was indeed because he lacked that primal chaos. Understanding this, he finally completely relaxed and began to guide the surrounding primal chaos into his body. As the primal chaos flowed into his body, the trembling of his body finally calmed down. An indescribable comfort and refreshment came from every part of his body, making him feel as if his body had finally come back to life. Previously, he was only in a half-dead state. The primal chaos possessed a power that was countless times stronger than the innate vitality. Under its refinement, Luo Fan's body began to undergo slight changes, becoming more powerful. This was only the secondary change. The more important change was that his body seemed to have become more integrated with heaven and earth, and more integrated with the great Tao. Every movement of it seemed to have changed the rules in space-time. It seemed to have become larger, and at the same time, it also became easier and more convenient. The primal chaos quickly flowed through his body, rushed into the acupuncture point of Xinzhong, and blasted into the innate gold core. As the first strand of primal chaos blasted into the core, the innate gold core suddenly shook violently. Then, it suddenly disintegrated and turned into a huge ball of golden light. It directly smashed the acupuncture point of Zhenzhong and began to dissipate. Chapter 590. Spotless and leakless in a trance, he seemed to have arrived at a dusky place. This dusky place was incomparably violent and chaotic. Earth, water, fire, and wind were all tangled together, and time and space seemed to not exist at all. No matter how much his eyesight was enhanced, he could not see more than 3 inches in front of him. An incomparably vast and terrifying aura filled his mind, making him feel as if he was suffering from an endless pressure and strangulation every time he operated his mind. Every time he changed his mind, 99% of his thoughts would be obliterated by this force. Luo Fan, who was originally extremely clear-headed in any state, fell into a trance at this moment. In a trance, in a blur, there seemed to be an endless number of strange existences crazily surging towards him from all directions, constantly filling up a mysterious corner of his mind, causing his mind to undergo some kind of inexplicable transformation. It seemed like only a moment had passed, yet it also seemed like billions of years had passed. After an unknown period of time, Luo Fan's body shook, and his mind regained its clarity. At the same time, he returned to his body. As soon as he regained his clarity, Luo Fan instantly figured out where he was just now. Chaos. Such a phenomenon can only occur in the chaos. After understanding this, he felt both surprised and helpless. What surprised him was that cultivating the leakless innate gold core could actually bring his mind into the chaos, allowing him to comprehend the mysteries of the chaos. What made him feel helpless was that he could not remain clear-headed in the chaos, and could not obtain any more mysteries from it. He could only rely on the natural surging of the chaos to bring him some insignificant benefits. After calming his mind, Luo Fan felt a sense of omnipotence rising from his heart. With a slight thought, the entire pyramid platform collapsed, and his figure appeared on the sun's core out of thin air. With a casual grab, the endless flames and heat in the surroundings gathered in the void, transformed, and instantly created a world with a circumference of 10 million miles. This world looked like a sphere with a circumference of 1,000 feet from the outside, but inside were mountains, rivers, plants, insects, and fishes, all vivid and lifelike. Moreover, everything in this world was no different from a real existence. It was absolutely impossible to tell that it was condensed from flames and heat. Luo Fan's body was exposed to the boundless flames and heat around him, but none of the flames and heat could penetrate 1,000 feet around his body. Perhaps it was not that he could not invade, but the moment the flames and heat came within 1,000 feet of his body, under the effect of the great Tao of the universe, they disappeared into thin air and turned into streams of chaotic yuan qi that appeared in his body out of nowhere, turning into his strength. A faint smile appeared on Luo Fan's face as he casually moved towards the heaven point he had condensed. Countless creatures were born in the world. In an instant, the space in the heavens and the earth suddenly sped up by hundreds of millions of times. During this process, the number of living beings increased explosively, while their quality rose explosively. In just the time of a few breaths, some living beings had cultivated formidable divine abilities, broken through the heavens and the earth, and charged out to appear in front of Luo Fan. It was a pity that these cultivators were only condensed from flames and heat. Although they had spirituality and had obtained various divine abilities over a long period of time, their essence was still flames and heat. After leaving the protection of the heavens and earth, they were roasted by the boundless flames and heat in the sun and collapsed with a loud bang. They merged back into the surroundings and disappeared without a trace. Luo Fan saw this process, but he could only sigh inwardly. With his ability, he still could not create things out of thin air. It was already extremely difficult for him to condense living beings in the fiery world with the flames and heat. It was still too difficult for him to make these living beings condense from flames and heat truly exist in the outside world. With a thought, he raised his hand and gently patted. The world in front of him was directly padded open by him and floated towards the sun's core, diagonally below. Soon, it brushed past the huge formation formed by 500 billion three-dimensional runes and entered the sun's core. As it entered the sun's core, even more flames and heat surged into the world even more wildly. With such a huge amount of energy replenished, the world swelled up rapidly. Land after land was condensed out of thin air, and more living beings were born naturally. The world became more and more prosperous and full of life at a visible rate. This world was only something Luo Fan had condensed casually. Even the living beings inside were nothing to the outside world. However, inside the world, the living beings were real after all. They had joy, anger, sorrow, and joy, as well as life and death. Luo Fan did not need this world to do anything at the moment, but he could not bear to destroy it and kill the billions of illusory living beings inside. As such, he directly sent this world into the sun's core, so that it could continue to exist with the help of the sun's core. Of course, Luo Fan's ability was far from that of the great beings or saints who had established heavenly realms. This world naturally could not exist forever like the heavenly realms. According to Luo Fan's calculations, in less than 10,000 years, this world would collapse under the endless flames and heat. It would eventually return to the sun's core and disappear without a trace. Luo Fan saw this inevitable trend, but he did not think of any other way to change it. At the moment, he could not bear to destroy this world with his own hands and kill all the living beings inside. But it did not mean that he was truly compassionate. Sending this world into the sun's core and allowing the sun's power to maintain its existence was already very benevolent of him. How could he waste any more energy for them? Suddenly, Luo Fan was seized by a sudden impulse. He smiled inexplicably and said, "I see. I never thought that there would be such a fortuitous encounter. Looks like this world can exist for 1,000 times longer than I expected." The reason why he had this enlightenment was because in that instant just now, he had faintly seen some fragments of the future. Thousands of years later, a peerless cultivator who could see through the truth of that world would appear in that world. This cultivator would gather all the power in that world and refine a treasure that could suppress the world. He would be able to divide the power that surged into the core of the sun, allowing that world to exist for more than 1,000 times longer than it should have. The great Tao is fair, and all tribulations have a chance of survival. This is indeed true. When he thought like this, Luo Fan threw everything in this world to the back of his mind and calmed his heart to carefully comprehend himself. At this moment, there was no longer a golden core or spirit in his body. All that was left was a body that seemed like it had never been cultivated before, as if it was a connate Tao body. However, this body was already over 1,000 times stronger than before. Tearing apart the world and destroying the stars seemed to be an extremely simple matter for this body. Moreover, with just a single thought from him, his body would instantly be filled with innate true origin of an extremely shocking quality. It was even to the extent that he could control all the power in an area of a few million kilometers at will. With all these changes, how could Luo Fan not know that he had already attained the innate leakless golden core? After a slight comparison, Luo Fan noticed that just his cultivation was already tens of thousands of times stronger than Li Er, who had even condensed 2 strands of Daoyuo Qi. If it was compared to the cultivation system of the primordial world, then the current Luo Fan at least had the supreme might of attaining the grand unity Dao fruit. Compared to Li Er, who was only equivalent to the true immortal realm, the difference was probably not even enough to describe it. Luo Fan sensed the changes in his body, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His body cultivated the golden core cultivation Dao in order to comprehend the mysteries of the Daoyuo Dao from the 3 flowers and 5 Qis unification after the leakless golden core, so that it would be helpful for his main body in the primordial world to break through the peak of the grand unity gold core and attain the Daoyuo Dao fruit. However, he didn't expect that he had already cultivated the innate leakless golden core in just a few million years and possessed the cultivation that he had spent hundreds of millions of years in the primordial world. If he were to succeed in the 3 flowers and 5 Qis unification, his cultivation would probably turn from guest to host and directly suppress his main body. How could this make Luo Fan not know whether to laugh or cry? It seems that the Dao fruit Dao that my main body cultivates might not be able to completely suppress the golden core Dao of this universe. Luo Fan secretly compared. However, even though he had such thoughts, he could almost see that after a period of time, the clone would most likely surpass his main body in terms of cultivation. However, Luo Fan did not have the thought of letting his main body cultivate the golden core Dao again. To Luo Fan, the Dao fruit Dao was his Dao. No matter how fast the cultivation speed of the golden core Dao was or how vast the mystical abilities after cultivation were, even if it could lead to the saint, it was still someone else's Dao. With Luo Fan's extremely stable Dao heart, how could he not know what was important and what was important? He did not walk his own Dao and instead walked on someone else's Dao. After sighing in admiration, Luo Fan thought to himself, when my mind entered the primal chaos, there seemed to be something in the primal chaos that entered my mind. I don't know what it is. With that suspicion, Luo Fan did not hesitate anymore. He began to carefully sense his mind, his will, and his body that had already turned into a connate leakless golden core. After all, the cultivation of Luo Fan's main body had reached the peak of Tai Gold. Although the strange chaos was so profound that it could not be described in words, what entered his mind was, after all, only what he obtained at the moment when he achieved the leakless golden core. But it was not something he could not perceive. As his thoughts changed, the flames and heat in the core of the sun surged crazily, instantly condensing into countless dragon and tiger forms. Like moths flying into a flame, they rushed toward him from all directions. They disappeared without a trace when they came within 1,000 feet of him. Through some strange method, they were transformed into chaotic vitality and filled into his body. The foundation of Luo Fan's leakless golden core was innate vitality. When he achieved the leakless golden core, he even had chaotic vitality added. Naturally, it was very different from the leakless golden core that had acquired the world's vitality as its foundation. Apart from the difference in divine power and cultivation mentioned earlier, the more essential difference was that when the leakless golden core absorbed the energy from the outside world into its body, the great Tao of the world would naturally refine and transform the energy into the purest chaotic vitality, which would be directly absorbed into the body to enrich the leakless golden core in the body. There would not even be a trace of impurities left in the leakless golden core. Without the impurities, the leakless golden core naturally did not have the various tribulations that hung over the heads of the immortals in the heavenly realm. Therefore, it could be said that the leakless golden core was the true freedom, the true longevity, and the true freedom. Perhaps It was more appropriate to call the leakless golden core the leakless golden core. He raised the senses brought by his main body to the highest level and carefully sensed all the changes in his body. Although his body had already achieved the leakless golden core, it was only equivalent to the tide disperser. He might be able to do whatever he wanted in the universe on Earth, but compared to his main body, he was still many times weaker. With this kind of body, if he wanted to raise his senses to the level that his main body could reach, the consumption would be almost enough to completely drain his body that had cultivated to the leakless gold core. Even at this moment, with the various divine powers that came with cultivating the leakless golden core, it was still very difficult for him to crazily fill his body with the endless flames and heat from the sun's core to replenish the consumption of his body. When Luo Fan sensed the surface of his body had instantly become shriveled. All his blood essence and power had been completely consumed. Luo Fan was shocked. He quickly raised his hand and waved, setting up hundreds of millions of runes in the void, forming a huge energy-drawing formation that crazily extracted the endless flames and heat from the sun's core. The number of flaming dragons and tigers that were like moths flying into a flame suddenly increased by more than 10 times after being drawn by the formation, and they crazily rushed into Luo Fan's body. With the replenishment of power that was 10 times stronger than before, Luo Fan felt that the consumption and replenishment were slightly balanced. His body also gradually returned to its full size. After heaving a sigh of relief, Luo Fan began to focus all his attention to sense the inside of his body. His physical body, strength, Niwen, mind, consciousness, memory, soul. Even the smallest part had to be checked tens of millions of times before he let it go. This went on for 9 days and 9 nights. After 9 days and 9 nights, Luo Fan finally found something. He sensed the remnants of some strange existences in the depths of his soul that did not originally exist in his soul. When he sensed these remnants, Luo Fan was shocked. He focused all of his senses on that strange existence, carefully analyzing and deducing the profundities within. This kind of strange existence could not be described clearly with words, but it was taking effect all the time, transforming his soul, his body, his power, and his relationship with the entire Earth and the universe. An incomparably strange feeling flooded Luo Fan's mind the moment he sensed that strange existence. All of a sudden, Luo Fan understood. This was flawless and leakless. In the primordial world, when Luo Fan obtained the primordial unity Tao fruit, he obtained the grand unity Tao fruit. In this universe on Earth, the innate leakless gold core was a state similar to attaining the primordial unity Tao fruit. To achieve this state, one naturally needed to obtain something similar to primordial unity. And this kind of existence was flawless, immaculate, and leakless. It was a strange existence that existed naturally. In fact, this strange existence did not have a name. It was just like the legendary Tao. Tao was just a name that later generations forcibly gave to express the truth of a certain supreme existence. It was just for convenience, but it did not mean that the supreme existence's name was really Tao. Similarly, the reason why that strange existence was called flawless and leakless was that all matter, living beings, energy, and everything that obtained this strange existence would have the characteristic of being flawless and leakless. Therefore, it was strongly named flawless and leakless. Seeing this flawless and leakless, Luo Fan suddenly understood a lot. But when he sensed it carefully, he seemed to have not understood anything. To Luo Fan, that strange feeling had not appeared for an unknown number of years. Now that it had appeared again, it made him incomparably happy. Flawless and leakless. If I can understand its true meaning, maybe my body can also have this supreme characteristic. Luo Fan thought to himself. Thinking about this, his thoughts moved slightly, and he casually tore open the void. He raised his hand and pointed, and a thought directly rushed into the torn void. Through a connection that even the great Tao could not block, it passed through 2 completely different universes of time and space, and reached his body in the untainted world. That bit of thought contained all of his feelings, speculations, senses, and memories regarding the immaculate and leakless technique. As for whether his body could really understand the true meaning of flawless and leakless, it was not something that Luo Fan could care about at this time. After sending that thought away, the crack suddenly closed and instantly disappeared without a trace. Just as he was about to continue to understand the mystery of flawless and leakless, suddenly an indescribable strange feeling suddenly surged in his heart. The appearance of this strange feeling made Luo Fan instantly recover from his plan to continue to understand flawless and leakless, and he instantly understood what was going on. On the distant Earth, his most direct goal of returning to the Earth universe had appeared. The mysterious person who had sent the souls of living beings through time and space to the untainted world had appeared again. So, it has been nearly 1,000 years. Luo Fan calculated for a while and knew that it was close to modern times. It was the time when Tao Xiaolin had transmigrated. After understanding the time, Luo Fan moved his heart and took a step forward, directly passing through the void. In an instant, he crossed the distance that even light would need 8 minutes to cross and returned to Earth, which he had left for nearly 1,000 years. As soon as he appeared on Earth, all the changes on Earth were instantly included in his perception. At this moment, it was already the 1990s on Earth. After understanding a little about the changes on Earth in the past 1,000 years, Luo Fan realized that all the changes on Earth in the past 1,000 years were no different from the situation before he transmigrated. History was still the same, and it was not affected by his appearance at all. Chapter 591. Time and Space. The mysterious time and space. Luo Fan looked at the scenes on Earth that were extremely far away, but extremely familiar to him, and he suddenly felt endless emotions. The 1990s of the 20th century was of great significance to Luo Fan. His entire childhood, adolescence, and even youth had been spent in this period of time. Therefore, compared to the ancient Northern Song dynasty, compared to the various wonders in the heavenly realm, compared to the various mysteries on the core of the sun, the current state of this place had a greater impact on him. Carefully savoring the inexplicable feeling flowing in his mind, Luo Fan suddenly felt like he was in a dream. After a long time, he sighed. With a thought, he had already arrived at a place that he was extremely familiar with. That place was his hometown on Earth. It was an ordinary village, not poor, but not rich either. In this village, he saw many faces that he was extremely familiar with. His parents, relatives, and neighbors were all there. He could even see a person that he had long expected to see, but he was not sure if it really existed. It was himself. I didn't expect that I would be able to see this scene again. Luo Fan hid in the void and looked at the extremely familiar scenes. He could not help but sigh with emotion. Ever since he traveled through time to the untainted world, he had experienced hundreds of billions of years. He did not forget the scenes in front of him at all. However, at the same time, he was not so pretentious as to maintain extremely passionate feelings like those in novels who had cultivated for hundreds of millions of years. He would still cry when he saw familiar people, and he would be willing to abandon everything in the present just to fulfill his wish in the past. Time was the most powerful force in the world. No living creature, no matter how strong or weak, could escape the influence of this supreme force. Even if he could distort time and travel freely through time, it was still ordinary. Although he still remembered all kinds of experiences before he traveled through time, still remembered all kinds of happiness and all kinds of pain, he knew that he could no longer go back. His mood and mentality were completely different from before. No matter how hard he tried, it was impossible for him to return to his original state. It was like all kinds of things that he thought were very interesting and happy in the past might have become a kind of pain and a kind of burden for him. Under such circumstances, how could he return to the past? Carefully looking at the familiar yet strange faces of his parents, whom he had not seen for God knows how many millions of years, Luo Fan suddenly felt that it was extremely difficult for him to have the kind of admiration, respect, and other emotions that he used to have. Although he was closer to them than the people around him, compared to before he transmigrated, It was like the difference between heaven and earth. In an instant, an inexplicable sorrow flashed through Luo Fan's mind. This kind of sorrow filled his entire mind at an incomparably fast speed and then spread to his entire soul and body. However, even though he was so sad, he realized that he couldn't shed a single tear. It was as if his ability to shed tears had degenerated after countless years of cultivation. Even though I can control time, travel back and forth between the past and the future, distorting the flow of time, in the end, I still lost to the mighty power of time. Luo Fan sighed. He couldn't bear to continue watching, so he took a step forward and arrived above a great city. He landed on the rooftop of a building with more than 30 floors. Looking down, the densely packed traffic and people below were like ants. The air in the entire city was extremely bad, and the surrounding acquired chi of heaven and earth was several times thinner than it was nearly 1,000 years ago. There were also countless impurities in it that were harmful to cultivation. If a cultivator who had cultivated to the leakless gold core took a breath of the acquired chi of heaven and earth on earth, his tribulation would probably be brought forward by a few days. If one only cultivated with the acquired chi of heaven and earth, the tribulation would probably arrive hundreds of thousands of times earlier. In such an environment, the legendary age of Dharma ending was probably nothing more than this. At this moment, Luo Fan's face was as gloomy as still water. Standing on the rooftop, he fixed his eyes on a room in another building. What was happening there was exactly what Luo Fan had seen in Tao Zhaolin's memory. That mysterious person had suddenly appeared there and met Tao Zhaolin, who originally lived there. At this moment, Luo Fan was in a very bad mood, to the extent that he wanted to destroy a few stars at will to vent his anger. How could he endure seeing that mysterious person in such a situation? After the mysterious person tore open a space-time rift and built a space-time tunnel to send Tao Zhaolin into it, his body shook and tore space apart, directly appearing in front of the mysterious person. Although the mysterious person was very mysterious, it was only his identity and his magic power. In fact, the mysterious person's appearance was not concealed at all. He was just a very ordinary young man with an ordinary appearance and figure. If he was thrown on the street, it would be difficult to distinguish him from other passers-by. Just as the young man was about to leave, he suddenly found the void in front of him trembling, as if something was about to pass through space and appear in front of him. He could not help but be shocked. With an extremely quick reaction, he turned his body and burrowed into the void, disappearing without a trace. The moment the young man disappeared, Luo Fan appeared in the room and said lightly, "You have a fast reaction." His words were very ordinary, and he did not express any negative emotions at all. However, anyone who heard these words would feel an oppressive feeling as if a storm was coming, as if an incomparably great disaster was about to break out. Luo Fan had crossed endless space-time from the primordial world to chase this mysterious person. Seeing that the mysterious person was right in front of him, how could he let the mysterious person escape so easily? With a thought, he instantly caught the trace left by the mysterious person when he burrowed into the void. His body moved and burrowed into the void, chasing after the mysterious person. The mysterious person was currently using a method to travel through space-time. However, he was only trying to escape, so he did not travel for a long time. It was only a short 3 days, and the space he traveled was not far. He only traveled from one city to another nearby city. Luo Fan had already comprehended the method to travel through space-time with the help of Tao Zhaolin's memory. Although it was different from the mysterious person, it was naturally not a problem for him to catch up to the mysterious person. When he reappeared, it was also 3 days later, somewhere in another city. At this moment, the mysterious person might not have thought that Luo Fan could travel through space-time. He was standing there in confusion, as if he was wondering why Luo Fan had appeared. At this moment, the void fluctuated, and Luo Fan's figure appeared in front of the person. The person's expression changed greatly. He instinctively shrank his body and burrowed into the void again. "Who are you? Why are you chasing after me?" The person said as he burrowed into the void. You casually sent humans to unpredictable space-time. You have no regard for human life. Everyone has the right to punish you. Luo Fan did not want to be entangled with this person, so he casually found such a reason, regardless of whether it was credible or not. The mysterious person, who called himself a god, heard Luo Fan's words and cursed. The mysterious person seemed to travel through space-time as if it was an instinct. He did not need to use any spells or magic power, but his speed was a little faster than Luo Fan's. Therefore, although Luo Fan was closely following behind the mysterious person and constantly shuttling through space and time, it was still difficult for him to truly catch the mysterious person. No matter how hard he tried, he was just a step away from catching the mysterious person. In just a few breaths of time, the mysterious person had traveled more than 3,000 times. Sometimes he traveled to the future, sometimes he traveled to the ancient times, and he practically left his footprints in every single era. The space they traveled through also covered the entire Earth, and almost every region on Earth had been visited. In the process of chasing, Luo Fan did not feel annoyed because of the mysterious person's constant escape. Instead, he gradually got rid of the annoyance caused by seeing his parents and relatives, and his mood became calm again. After all, his cultivation realm had reached the peak of Tai, and his Taoist heart had long been perfected. Naturally, the situation where he could not control his emotions would not last for too long. After traveling thousands of times, he gradually gained a better understanding of the mysterious man. The mysterious person's ability to travel through space-time was obviously as he had expected. It was not a kind of magic power that he had cultivated, but a natural ability, and his own strength was at most similar to a Jindan master. However, the core of the power in his body was not a Jindan, but a very strange, mysterious energy that had a very close connection with space-time. It was because of this mysterious energy that this person could have the ability of immortality that a Jindan master did not have. It was also because of this immortality and the ability to travel through space-time that he dared to call himself a god. As Luo Fan chased the mysterious person, he secretly tried to figure out the source of the mysterious person. After a few breaths, Luo Fan chased the mysterious person for more than 4,000 times. The mysterious person finally could not bear it anymore and stopped at a very strange point in time. With a slight thought, Luo Fan broke through the space-time and appeared in front of the mysterious person. "Humph, I originally wanted to let you go, but you were so unyielding. Then you will be annihilated along with this space-time." The mysterious person looked at Luo Fan fiercely and roared. This space-time was very strange. It seemed to be at the intersection of different space-time, and time and space overlapped in a very strange way. The place seemed to still be on Earth, but the whole Earth seemed to have a certain double image, as if the two Earths had overlapped in a very strange way. The whole space-time was extremely violent and unstable, as if it could collapse at any time, completely wiping out all matter, all energy, and all living beings in it. After the mysterious person finished speaking, the energy core in his body shook, causing a very strong change in space-time. In an instant, the whole space-time twisted wildly, and the two Earths that had overlapped suddenly staggered. This stagger produced an extremely terrifying power, instantly collapsing the space-time, causing the whole space-time to be covered with countless strange cracks that could be seen with the naked eye, as if countless spider webs had wrapped the whole space-time out of thin air. Die. The mysterious person laughed, and his body drilled, gradually disappearing in this space-time at a speed that was many times slower than before. Luo Fan frowned and raised his hand to cover the mysterious person. At this time, Luo Fan had already achieved the innate leakless gold core, and his cultivation level was comparable to that of achieving the Tai Dao fruit. Moreover, because he achieved the innate leakless gold core in this Earth universe, he saw that there was no dirt and no leakage, and he had an extremely deep compatibility with the great Tao of the entire Earth universe. The power that he could exert in this Earth universe was even more powerful than the body of the Tai gold core. With such a powerful power, it should have been an extremely easy thing to capture the mysterious person who was equivalent to a Gene Dance stage perfected being. However, when he covered the mysterious person, an extremely terrifying power, which was even more powerful than the power that Luo Fan could exert, suddenly appeared out of nowhere in this space-time. In an instant, the hand that Luo Fan used to grab the mysterious person was smashed into pieces and turned into a pile of meat paste. Along with this instant of delay, the mysterious person had already laughed heartily and vanished from this expanse of space. Luo Fan frowned and did not continue to pursue the mysterious person. Instead, he was very interested in the power that appeared out of thin air, which was millions of times more powerful than the power that his body could exert in the untainted world. That's right, he was just interested but not afraid. Although that power was millions of times more powerful than what his body could exert, and could even easily kill his entire body, to Luo Fan, it was just a power. It would only arouse his interest, but could not make him, who was full of infinite confidence, feel even a trace of fear. This space-time should not be formed naturally. It is impossible for a naturally formed space-time to have such a miraculous scene. The power may be related to the formation of this space-time. He thought quietly. With a slight thought, the palm that was crushed into meat paste by the power instantly recovered, as if it had never been injured. After cultivating the leakless gold core, his entire body had essentially turned into a huge gold core. For this mysterious leakless gold core, any injury suffered by the body was just an illusion. As long as he thought about it, he could naturally recover. Wouldn't it be like playing a game to repair the palm that still had flesh and blood? In the process of thinking and repairing the palm, the countless cracks that filled the entire space-time had become extremely dense. Almost everything that the naked eye could see was completely filled by the cracks. In contrast, the undamaged space-time was more like the cracks in a black curtain. However, although such a huge number of cracks filled the entire space-time, it could not affect the area of 3 feet around Luo Fan's body. It was as if the area of 3 feet around Luo Fan's body had become a world of its own, a space-time of its own. No matter how the outside space-time changed, it would not be able to hurt him. The power of the leakless gold core in this Earth's universe was even more powerful than the Tai gold. With such power, it could naturally form an impenetrable domain around the body. So how could it be so easily injured by the cracks in the space-time? But that was all. If the entire space-time really collapsed, it would be impossible for Luo Fan to come out unscathed. Even if his body and soul would not be completely destroyed like the mysterious man who called himself God had thought, it would not be good. Therefore, seeing that the entire space-time was about to collapse, Luo Fan thought about going into the void and leaving this space-time. At this moment, Luo Fan had a rough idea of what was going on in this space-time. This space-time seemed to be formed by the fusion of the Earth 5. 6 billion years ago and the Earth 5. 6 billion years later by some kind of power or some kind of law. It was precisely because of this that the time-space seemed so fragile and that it would collapse so easily. And the destructive power produced by the collapse of 2 space-time that were so far away from each other would be earth-shattering, beyond the imagination of all living beings. Luo Fan went into the space-time crack and found that the space-time crack here was different from everything he had seen before. In the process of traveling through space-time thousands of times before, the space-time crack had countless directions to travel in, and one could enter a time point in any direction. As for whether the time point was the present, the future, or the past, if one had not cultivated the method of traveling through space-time, it could only depend on luck. But the space-time crack here was completely different from the other times. The space-time crack here only had one direction. Other than the direction where Luo Fan came from, all other directions were shrouded by an extremely strange smoke. This smoke could appear in the space-time crack, so it was naturally not ordinary smoke. This smoke was like a substance, constantly curling up, constantly twisting and constantly surging in the space-time crack. It was like some kind of monster that was waiting to devour people. This smoke was definitely not here when I passed by before. Why did it suddenly appear now? Luo Fan frowned as he looked at the smoke and thought to himself. Since he was curious, Luo Fan naturally could not leave without caring about it. With a slight thought, he raised his hand and pointed, and a stream of innate true origin condensed into a human figure, colliding with the smoke. At this time, Luo Fan had already cultivated the innate leakless gold core, which was enough to be called remarkable. Although the human figure condensed by the innate true origin was only condensed by the true origin, it was as if it was made of flesh and blood, and also had a very strong spiritual nature, almost like a living creature. At the moment when the human figure collided with the smoke, Luo Fan's thought that was attached to the human figure instantly felt an incomparably terrifying power suddenly erupt from the smoke. In an instant, the human figure and his thought were smashed into powder and then completely devoured. The strength of that terrifying power was several times stronger than the power that had turned his palm into meat paste in that strange space-time. It had also reached a level that Luo Fan couldn't even hope to catch up to at this moment. Chapter 592. Runes. This was because when that indescribable power erupted, countless complicated and profound runes suddenly flashed out of thin air within the smoke. These runes were very profound and had completely surpassed the scope of the 500 billion runes that Luo Fan had obtained before. They were even more profound, mysterious, and inconceivable. At this time, Luo Fan had yet to completely comprehend the 500 billion runes. As for these runes that were beyond the scope of the 500 billion runes, he was even more unable to comprehend them. However, even so, it did not change the surprise in Luo Fan's heart. This was because the existence of these runes proved that the smoke in front of him was man-made. Since it was man-made, it proved that there was some secret hidden behind the smoke. According to Luo Fan's previous calculations, this space-time gap was between the incomparably distant future and the incomparably long past. The existence of such smoke indicated that there was something hidden in the boundlessly distant future or the incomparably long past by some powerful beings. Why is there no powerful figure in the Earth's universe? Why is there a heavenly state? Why did it enter the age of Dharma, ending so quickly? Perhaps I can find the answer to all these secrets behind the smoke. Luo Fan thought to himself. However, even so, he did not directly go against the smoke. He did not have the thought of breaking through the smoke to see what secrets it contained. It was not that he did not want to, but his current ability was not enough to support his actions. The power that had killed the true essence incarnation that he had condensed was so strong that even his original body in the untainted world with the power of the Wuji Palace in the void might not be able to unleash such power. Moreover, that was only produced when the runes in the smoke flickered for an insignificant moment. If the runes were to fully appear, the power that would erupt would be at least tens of thousands of times stronger than the power that had just erupted. How could Luo Fan withstand such a terrifying power? I'll try again after I completely understand the 500 billion runes. Luo Fan made up his mind. He turned around and shuttled in the only direction of the space-time rift. For Luo Fan, the era he was most familiar with was the era before he transmigrated. If he wanted to find an era where he could stay the most comfortably, it would naturally be the era before he entered the space-time rift. Therefore, Luo Fan's mind moved slightly, and his figure kept leaping between the cracks of time and space. 1 year, 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 100 million years, 1 billion years after traveling for a total of 6 billion years. Luo Fan finally sensed the familiar aura of the era. With a slight thought, he lifted his hand and tore open a space-time gap, directly entering it. The space-time fluctuations rapidly distorted and swept across his body, but they could not harm him at all. Raising his eyes and looking around, Luo Fan sensed that he had returned to the 90s of the 20th century. Moreover, it just so happened to be the instant after he entered the space-time rift and traveled through time. The location happened to be Tao Xiaolin's room. The waves of space-time fluctuations in the surroundings proved everything that had just happened here. At that moment, Luo Fan was not too concerned about the mysterious man's escape. No matter what the mysterious man did, what had to happen would happen. As long as he locked his thoughts on his current self on Earth, the mysterious man would reappear one day. Of course, if the mysterious man did not reappear, it would not be a bad thing. At least it proved that Luo Fan's transmigration was not the mysterious man's doing. It was also something that was acceptable. As long as Luo Fan was on Earth, everything that happened on Earth would not escape his senses. Therefore, Luo Fan did not set up any arrangements around him at that moment. With a simple thought, he lifted his feet and leaped lightly, arriving at the top of Mount Tai. Mount Tai was a famous mountain in China. Before he transmigrated, Luo Fan had wanted to climb Mount Tai countless times to feel the lofty sentiments of the ancient emperors. However, due to various realities, he could not do so. At that moment, he had supreme magic power and needed to find a place to comprehend the 500 billion runes. Naturally, he chose Mount Tai. Unfortunately, when he carefully felt the beautiful scenery on Mount Tai and wanted to find something special about Mount Tai, he did not feel the so-called lofty sentiments. He only felt that the scenery here was indeed a little better than other places. That was all. After a long time, he could only sigh inwardly, knowing that his appreciation level did not improve much. With a casual step, his body disappeared into the mountain. With the support of his inner energy, he created a spherical cave with a radius of 1,000 feet in the middle of the mountain. With Luo Fan's current ability, no matter where he was, he would be able to draw in the boundless flames and heat that existed within the sun's core at will. After all, he had stayed above the sun's core for a few millions of years, and his current cultivation had attained a level that was comparable to attaining the grand unity Tao fruit. With a slight thought, he casually waved his hand. Countless runes appeared densely around this spherical cave, which had a diameter of 1,000 feet. These runes were mysterious and unfathomable. They were intertwined in a complex and unimaginable way, gradually emitting an inexplicable spirituality. It was as if, because of the complex structure, it had become some kind of strange creature. When the runes appeared, the whole cave suddenly shook. All of a sudden, there were countless rays of golden light spreading out, and in an instant, the surrounding rocks of the cave were completely covered. It looked as if Luo Fan had entered a boundless golden space. Then, from the distant sun's core, billions of runes appeared out of thin air and quickly intertwined to form a huge spherical rune formation that was similar to the runes around the cave, but more than 100 times larger. After the formation was formed, a huge vortex suddenly appeared above the sun's core. Inexhaustible flames and heat crazily rushed into the spherical rune formation. Then, after some mysterious transformation, they turned into wisps of chaotic yuan qi. Through some incomparably mysterious channel, they crossed a distance that even light would need 8 minutes to cross, and appeared in the inner part of Mount Tai on Earth, in the rune formation surrounding Luo Fan. As the wisps of chaotic yuan qi appeared, the faint spirituality of the rune formation seemed to emit a joyful thought. Then, the space-time inside the spherical rune formation began to inexplicably distort. The speed of the passage of time gradually accelerated. As the formation above the sun core attracted more and more flames and heat, more and more chaotic yuan qi was formed, and the chaotic yuan qi that was transmitted to the interior of Mount Tai naturally increased exponentially. Under the growth, the flow of time inside the rune formation became faster and faster. 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. After an unknown period of time, the speed of time inside the rune formation had reached 3,650 times, which was the same as the speed of time when Luo Fan condensed the pyramid platform above the sun's core. To gather the 3 flowers and 5 qis, this is an illusory matter. There is no method to follow, and I can only wait for the opportunity. In any case, I'm not in a hurry. Let's wait until I completely comprehend the 500 billion runes, and then explore the secret behind the smoke. Luo Fan thought so. Ignoring the situation around him, he slowly closed his eyes. In his mind, countless runes exploded with a loud rumble. They filled his entire mind, causing him to lose all perception of the outside world. The rune formation accelerated the flow of time to 3,650 times, then stabilized, and the amount of chaotic yuan qi consumed rapidly decreased. Because of this, more and more chaotic yuan qi was transmitted from the sun's core into the rune formation, causing the density of the chaotic yuan qi in the rune formation to increase. After an unknown period of time, it had already turned into a liquid substance, completely soaking Luo Fan's body. Luo Fan's body had already become a flawless and leakless golden Dan, and naturally attracted the chaotic yuan qi into his body, constantly replenishing his flawless and leakless golden Dan. At the same time, it constantly improved his physical body and strengthened his divine abilities. However, these were after all only natural movements of the body, and could not compare to Luo Fan controlling his body to absorb the chaotic yuan qi for cultivation. As a result, the speed at which the chaotic yuan qi was consumed could not match the speed at which the chaotic yuan qi flowed in. As a result, the density of the chaotic yuan qi in the rune formation became greater and greater, and as time passed, the chaotic yuan qi gradually turned from liquid to solid. If this continued, there would be a day when the chaotic yuan qi would solidify and press down on Luo Fan's body, thus disturbing Luo Fan's thoughts, and causing Luo Fan to be unable to concentrate and continue thinking. But at this moment, the spirituality that Luo Fan had bestowed to the rune formation finally came into effect. But when the chaotic yuan qi condensed into a semi-solid and semi-liquid state, the rune formation finally sensed that something was wrong. Gradually, it slowed down the speed at which the chaotic yuan qi condensed, causing the chaotic yuan qi in the rune formation to maintain a semi-solid and semi-liquid state. In such a state, the pressure of the chaotic yuan qi was extremely great. It could constantly force the chaotic yuan qi into the body of Luo Fan, allowing the amount of chaotic yuan qi that Luo Fan could refine at every moment to reach the greatest degree. But it would not affect Luo Fan's thoughts, and could be said to be the most appropriate and best state. Luo Fan did not care about the rune formation at this moment. Since he had already bestowed a spirituality to the rune formation, he naturally had enough confidence that the rune formation would absolutely be able to handle everything and did not need his intervention. If he did not even have this little bit of confidence, then with his current cultivation, he would have cultivated to the body of a dog. At this moment, Luo Fan's entire mind was focused on the 500 billion runes. The 500 billion runes had already remained in the memory of Luo Fan for millions of years. In such a long period of time, Luo Fan had countless opportunities to comprehend these runes, but because he had more important things to do, he had put it aside and only relied on the superficial knowledge that he had gained from observing and combining it with his own remarkable abilities to set up a variety of formations and use various remarkable abilities. Now, in order to clearly see the secret hidden behind the smoke, he finally made up his mind to understand everything about the rune formation from the most basic point of view. The amount of work, compared to comprehending with just a glance, was hundreds of millions of times greater. The amount of energy needed was unimaginable. It was precisely because he began to comprehend the mysteries of the rune formation from the most basic point of view that Luo Fan finally discovered how profound, how complicated, and how broad and profound the rune formation was. These runes, perhaps, are the foundation of the cultivation of the entire earth. This enlightenment gradually emerged in Luo Fan's mind. Classifying the 500 billion runes was not a difficult task for Luo Fan. It was just that it was too complicated and boring. It took him 1,000 years. Luo Fan had just divided the 500 billion runes into 365 categories. Among them, the smallest number was the most basic, the simplest, and the most original 48,000 runes that seemed to be drawn with just one stroke. Although they were the most basic, the simplest, and the most original runes, but these runes were also all-encompassing, almost encompassing the entire universe, the entire world, and all aspects of space-time. What earth, water, fire, wind, what metal, what wood, what water, what fire, what earth, what time, what space, what nothingness, what slaughter, everything was contained in these 48,000 runes. Apart from these 48,000 runes, the other 365 categories had increased in complexity by a certain margin. The number of the second category was 10 times more than the basic 48,000 runes, and the complexity was also 10 times greater. The third category was 10 times more than the second category, and the complexity was also 10 times greater, so on and so forth, all the way to the 365th category. The number was as innumerable as the stars in the sky, and the complexity had reached the point where an ordinary person would not be able to withstand the complexity, and their head would explode if they looked at it. Luo Fan was not moved by the complexity of these runes. Instead, he ignored all appearances and grasped the most fundamental point, which was the most basic, the simplest, and the most original 48,000 runes that seemed to be extremely simple and crude. The root of all complex systems was extremely simple. Just like the incomprehensibly complex computers on Earth in the 21st century, wasn't the root of it all from the switches that represented 0 and 1. Similarly, the foundation of the unimaginably complex runes was only the 48,000 most basic runes before him. No matter how complex, complicated, or profound the runes were, traces could be found from these 48,000 runes if they were traced back to their source. They could also be formed through the evolution of these most basic runes. Because he knew this, Luo Fan directly swept aside the other 365 categories of runes and used all his energy to comprehend the 48,000 runes. The 48,000 runes seemed simple, but they reached the root. Every line, every twist, and every trace of structure was describing the most original mystery of the great Tao of the entire Earth's universe. The lines that outlined the runes were like the traces of the existence of the great Tao, as if the most original power of the entire Earth's universe had been directly manifested, and it was boundlessly profound. As he studied, Luo Fan gradually became immersed in these 48,000 basic runes. Combining the various great Tao truths that he had comprehended for hundreds of millions of years, he gradually felt that there was an indescribable beauty in the 48,000 runes in front of him. The mysteries of the grand Tao of any universe almost surpass the limits of what words can describe, and even surpass the limits of imagination. To be able to compress the mysteries of the grand Tao into 48,000 runes, the person who created these runes must be terrifying. After an unknown period of time, Luo Fan finally let out a long breath, and he couldn't help but let out a long sigh. The great Tao of the Earth's universe was different from the great Tao of the primordial world. In fact, there were even some places that were completely opposite. Some of these runes could unleash extraordinary power in the primordial world. Some could at most only have the same power as in the Earth's universe. Some could only unleash an extremely small power, and some could not even be used at all. In fact, they could even unleash the completely opposite power. Because of all these reasons, Luo Fan's main body could not directly use these runes in the primordial world. However, this did not mean that these runes were useless to Luo Fan's main body. On the contrary, the significance of these runes to Luo Fan was not inferior to the nameless cultivation method that he had comprehended when he first saw the Buzhou Mountain, the Tao fruit Great Tao. This was because these runes were an extremely in-depth and extremely original description of the great Tao of a universe. The thought revealed by this description and the angle that was displayed could only be possessed by a supreme existence whose cultivation had reached a certain level that Luo Fan could not imagine at the moment. If Luo Fan could absorb this thought and match his point of view with the angle displayed by the rune, Then to a certain extent, he would be able to comprehend the thought and angle of the supreme existence in advance. For Luo Fan, who was currently at the peak of the Tai gold number and was diligently seeking the Zenith Heaven Tao fruit, at the very least, it could allow him to directly break through the Tai gold number and attain the Zenith Heaven Tao fruit. If he improved further, it might even allow Luo Fan to advance a few more realms in the Zenith Heaven Tao fruit realm. Even if he could not make his thoughts and his angle match the supreme existence, as long as Luo Fan could use the same method as these 48,000 runes to summarize the mysteries of the great Tao of the primordial world, even if he could not completely understand it, there would definitely be countless benefits. At the very least, it would allow the various divine abilities, magic arts, cultivation methods, and mental cultivation methods that he had comprehended in the past to almost obtain a qualitative improvement. Thus, it would greatly strengthen his cultivation foundation and greatly increase the possibility of him attaining the Zenith Heaven Tao fruit. After a long sigh, Luo Fan's mind moved slightly. The half-solid and half-liquid chaotic vitality around him suddenly changed and condensed into countless extremely simple runes out of thin air. They rushed towards Luo Fan's body crazily. Chapter 593. After condensing the chaotic vitality into runes, there was not much of an increase in quality. It was just that due to the condensation, its density was dozens of times greater than normal chaotic vitality. However, after condensing the chaotic vitality into runes, its affinity with Luo Fan increased by tens of thousands of times. The instant all the runes entered Luo Fan's body, they completely fused with Luo Fan's body. They seemed to be deeply engraved in the depths of Luo Fan's body and disappeared without a trace. Search for the latest updates here. After the runes fused with his body, Luo Fan felt his body's toughness rising at an extremely rapid speed. Even his compatibility with the entire Earth and the universe underwent a tremendous change. In the past, he could cause all sorts of great changes in the world with just a wave of his hand. However, those changes were very messy, and they were very basic changes. For example, if he wanted to convert the surrounding vitality into the true sun fire, he first had to understand the characteristics of the true sun fire and the vitality's characteristics, and he also had to understand the process of the conversion between the two. Only then would he be able to make the surrounding vitality go through all sorts of complicated changes with a single thought, and finally convert the vitality into the true sun fire. The other results were similar, and there was no difference in essence. However, at this moment, after he fused these runes into his body, he realized that he no longer needed to think clearly and understand every single step if he wanted to cause some changes to occur in his surroundings. Instead, he was able to omit most of the complicated steps. The entire process was much simpler than before. During this process, as more and more runes condensed from chaotic vitality fused with his body, the process became simpler. It was as if every rune that fused with his body made his connection with the earth and the universe a step closer. Sensing the changes in his body, Luo Fan was slightly surprised, but he did not find it unimaginable. After calculating carefully, Luo Fan knew that this process would continue for at least a few hundred years. He closed his eyes again and continued to comprehend the second type of the 365 types of runes. Those 480,000 runes were 10 times more complicated than the previous 48,000 runes. These runes were developed based on the previous 48,000 runes. Although they were not the most original, simplest, and most basic runes, they were still the most profound, most original, and most simple runes in the rune system. It was conceivable that there were only a very small number of cultivators in the Earth's universe who could study runes to this level. Understanding the rune system was similar to Luo Fan's understanding of technology before he transmigrated. What was truly complicated and difficult to see clearly were the two extremes. One was a mystery as small as the quantum level, and the other was the complete opposite, as vast as the entire universe. The ordinary, the more common, the order of magnitude that was neither too large nor too small was instead the easiest to understand and study. The rune system was also ordinary. The runes that were of average complexity were the runes that cultivators used the most, understood the most, and comprehended the most. The runes that were simple to a certain extent and complex to a certain extent were the runes that cultivators could not truly comprehend and understand. Being able to study runes to a certain degree of simplicity or complexity was the standard to measure a cultivator's understanding of the rune system. Even the 48,000 simplest runes among the 500 billion runes that Luo Fan had come into contact with at this moment could not possibly be the simplest and most basic runes in the entire rune system. After all, even though these runes were simple, they were already able to unleash the various powers that could be separated from each other. This naturally meant that there were even simpler and more fundamental runes beneath these runes. Only then would it make sense. Time passed by slowly as Luo Fan comprehended the rune system. Every long or short interval, Luo Fan would wake up once. And every time he woke up, it would naturally cause the surrounding chaotic yuan qi to change, causing the runes that were condensed from the chaotic yuan qi to become more complex. And every time these runes became more complex, Luo Fan felt that the strength of his body had increased by tens or hundreds of times, and his connection with the earth and the universe had become much closer. Even the process of changing the surrounding heaven and earth had been reduced by several times. In this way, when Luo Fan woke up for the 100th time, around 36,000 years had already passed. This time, after Luo Fan woke up and changed the runes that were condensed from the surrounding chaotic yuan qi, he no longer immersed himself in the comprehension of the runes. Instead, his thoughts penetrated through the surrounding rune formation, penetrated through Mount Tai, and shrouded the entire earth. Luo Fan had stayed in the rune formation for nearly 36,000 years, but only about 10 years had passed in the outside world. Just as Luo Fan had expected, the society of the earth had developed to the beginning of the 21st century before Luo Fan had crossed over. If history had not changed, whether the mysterious man who called himself God would appear, and whether my predecessor had crossed over, would only be a matter of a few years. Luo Fan thought to himself. At this time, the other Luo Fan on the earth was 20 years old, and there were still more than 3 years before he crossed over. 3 years, for the current Luo Fan, was just the blink of an eye. If he were to immerse himself in the comprehension of the rune system, it would have been more than 3 years by the time he woke up. In addition, at this time, Luo Fan's comprehension of the runes had reached a certain limit. The time needed to comprehend the rune system might even be the sum of the time spent to comprehend the runes before. After all, with the increase in the number of runes by 10 times, the number of runes for each complex category will be nearly 10 times greater than the total number of runes of all the previous categories combined. Even if Luo Fan's understanding of the rune system was getting deeper and deeper, and the speed of comprehension was getting faster and faster, it was impossible to reduce the time needed to comprehend it too much. Spending the same amount of time to comprehend all the runes before was already considered, as Luo Fan's progress in comprehension of the rune system was beyond imagination. It was precisely because it would take more than 36,000 years to comprehend the 101st category of runes again that Luo Fan stopped and continued to comprehend. If that wasn't the case, even though the appearance of that mysterious person would still draw his attention when he entered the state of comprehension, it would interrupt his comprehension and affect his efficiency. It might even cause his comprehension of the 101 types of talismans to become obstructed. It was just to save more than 3 years of time, but it was not worth Luo Fan taking such a risk. After carefully sensing the changes of the entire earth and discovering that the mysterious man had not appeared, Luo Fan only focused a little bit of his consciousness on his predecessor who had transmigrated to this world. Most of his energy was focused on the surrounding rune formation. At this moment, the rune formation that he had previously set up and had even developed a strong intelligence was no longer perfect in Luo Fan's eyes. Although it had not become simple and crude, It had taken countless detours. Although Luo Fan had only comprehended 100 out of the 365 types of talismans during these 36,000 years, his understanding of the talisman system had already improved at shocking rate. It could even be said that no one in the entire heavenly realm or the entire earth could compare to him in terms of understanding the talisman system. At this moment, in the eyes of Luo Fan, this rune formation that had developed a strong intelligence had countless unnecessary rune structures. And it was precisely these unnecessary rune structures that prevented the power of the rune formation from increasing to its strongest, and also prevented the spirituality of the rune formation from reaching its most perfect state. For example, there were some functions that could be achieved by combining several first and second category runes. But Luo Fan had taken it for granted that he had used dozens of 86 and 123 types of runes to achieve them. Such problems appeared in almost every position of the rune formation. How could this rune formation be perfect? Perhaps what I think is perfect now, after I have a deeper understanding of the rune system in the future, I will take countless detours like this rune formation. Luo Fan slightly sighed. Although he had such a sigh, but Luo Fan did not give up on the idea of improving the rune formation. Even if the improvement was not really perfect, it was still relatively perfect. It was enough to increase the power of the rune formation by several times. If he did not improve it, because the changes were not as perfect as he thought, then it could only be described as giving up eating for fear of choking. With a thought, Luo Fan casually waved his hand, and a faintly discernible spirituality floated out from the rune formation. This spirituality was rather vague, and could not even find food and escape like an animal. Spirituality was originally an invisible and intangible existence, and was even more illusory than thoughts. But this rune formation was arranged by Luo Fan, and everything about the rune formation was under his control. In addition, the connection between Luo Fan and the entire universe had already reached an unimaginable degree, and this illusory spirituality was no longer an unfathomable existence. After the rune formation lost its spirituality, it suddenly stagnated, and a deathly still aura emitted from the rune formation. The entire rune formation became countless times more mechanical. In an instant, endless chaotic yuan qi, which was hundreds of times more than what Luo Fan could withstand when he was not cultivating, frantically seeped out from the rune formation, constantly compressing towards the hundreds of feet-wide spherical cave. The chaotic yuan qi that was originally in a half-solidified state suddenly solidified at a speed visible to the naked eye. Seeing this, Luo Fan did not feel surprised. With a thought, an indescribable suction force was suddenly produced from within his body. The chaotic yuan qi that was gradually solidifying around him condensed into countless complex and profound runes at an unimaginable speed, madly rushing towards his body. In an instant, it drilled into his body and fused with his body. Throughout the entire process, there was not the slightest change in Luo Fan's expression. It was as if he had drawn the endless chaotic yuan qi into his body and only took a deep breath. As the yuan qi dissipated, the surrounding chaotic yuan qi once again turned into a semi-solid, semi-liquid state and could no longer affect Luo Fan. In these 36,000 years, Luo Fan had constantly changed the state of the chaotic yuan qi he absorbed into his body, and the amount of chaotic yuan qi he absorbed at every moment naturally increased along with the changes. At this moment, even if he did not cultivate and did not use his cultivation technique, the amount of chaotic yuan qi he could absorb was already tens of thousands of times more than before. In order to provide such a huge amount of chaotic yuan qi, the rune formation that constantly absorbed flames and heat and converted them into chaotic yuan qi had already expanded by hundreds of times, and the power it produced was also tens of thousands of times stronger than before. It had even formed a black that could be seen from Earth on the sun. However, although it had drawn and converted such a huge amount of flames and heat, the sun did not suffer too much damage because of this. Compared to the huge rune formation that had never appeared before, the consumption of the sun at every moment was no different. After all, as long as the sun existed in the universe, it would constantly burn, constantly undergo nuclear changes, and constantly produce an endless amount of energy that radiated to the entire universe. The amount of energy radiated at every moment was definitely an unimaginably astronomical figure. Although the rune formation that Luo Fan had constructed was rather huge to him, it was unimaginably small to the entire sun. This could be seen from the fact that on Earth, one could only see a black dot on the sun that could not be seen if one did not look carefully. Such a tiny rune formation, even if it had an extremely high efficiency in absorbing flames and heat, could only absorb a small portion of the energy that the sun radiated to the universe at every moment. It could be said that regardless of whether the rune formation existed or not, the energy would definitely be consumed and would definitely be radiated out. Therefore, the existence of the rune formation did not affect the entire sun at all. It was even more impossible for the existence of the rune formation to shorten the lifespan of the sun. Similarly, the rune formation composed of 500 billion runes was not much different from the rune formation that Luo Fan had constructed. Both used the energy radiated by the sun at every moment to replenish themselves, but did not seek the origin of the sun and would not affect the lifespan of the sun. On this point, it could be said that the thinking of Luo Fan and the supreme existence that had opened up the heavenly realm had a certain degree of agreement. Within Mount Tai on Earth, Luo Fan's thoughts moved slightly. His ability to change the heavens and earth, which had been enhanced by an unknown number of times, was naturally activated. In an instant, the rune formation that enveloped the cave collapsed with a loud rumble, and the time here in Abe that had been distorted by the rune formation also returned to normal in an instant. In the blink of an eye, it had changed from 3650 times faster than the outside world to the same speed as the outside world. Such a violent change in time was enough to twist a material that was hundreds of millions of times harder than a diamond into powder. However, Luo Fan's physical body, after so many upgrades and changes, had long reached the point where nothing in the universe could damage it. This power of space-time distortion, which was enough to twist a material that was hundreds of millions of times harder than a diamond into powder, only caused his body to sway slightly, and did not even cause him to lose a strand of hair. After the rune formation collapsed, it once again transformed into countless runes, floating in the void. Luo Fan had long thought through everything clearly, and naturally would not hesitate at this time. With a slight movement of his thoughts, the countless runes changed wildly at an unimaginable speed. Some runes rapidly assembled, and some runes constantly collapsed. After a few moments, the runes that were bobbing up and down in the void had undergone an earth-shattering change. After this change, the number of runes had been reduced to 1/10 of the original, and the complexity of the runes was reduced by 10 times compared to before. However, such a change did not cause the runes to become simple and crude. Instead, there was a simplicity and perfection that had never been present before. If one were to describe it in terms of the concept on Earth, the change of these runes was like a fat woman that was 4 meters tall and weighed 300 kilograms had turned into a slender beauty that was 6 meters tall and weighed less than 100 kilograms. Luo Fan lifted his hand and pointed lightly. The runes that were only 1/10 of the original number began to swim. In an instant, they constantly assembled in the void, constantly building, and once again formed a rune formation that completely covered the entire cave with a diameter of 100 feet. Although the runes used in this formation were only 1/10 of the original number, but it did not appear to be lacking compared to the original. Instead, it mysteriously wrapped the entire cave even more tightly than before. And this was only the most superficial change of the formation. The more profound change was that the power of the formation was more than 10 times stronger than before, and there was even a sense of spirituality that was more than 10 times more perfect than before, gradually growing from the rune formation. Looking at the formation in front of him, Luo Fan's mind flashed a trace of satisfaction. With a casual point of his finger, he sent the spirituality that he had captured from the previous formation into the newly born formation. In an instant, it fused with the spirituality that was constantly growing in the formation, causing the entire rune formation to produce an extremely subtle and mysterious vibration. Amidst the tremors, the entire formation was like a sleeping divine dragon that was moving its body and gradually waking up. With this vibration, the space within the rune formation began to change. The first change was the space within the formation. The entire spherical cave that was originally only 100 feet in diameter was constantly expanding in an incomparably subtle way. In the blink of an eye, it had expanded into a huge space with a radius of 100 miles. As the space around them changed, the flow of time within the formation also gradually increased. If the way the formation changed the flow of time before was said to be walking forward, then the change in the flow of time now was like sitting on a rocket and shooting into the sky. Chapter 594. When the speed of light reached 3,650 times that of the outside world, the change stopped. It was not a big problem for the runic formation to speed up the flow of time after the changes. However, if he continued to speed up the flow of time, the amount of chaos yuan qi required would be 100 times more. However, the ratio was too low, and the amount of chaos yuan qi required was not proportional to the speed of time. It was too wasteful. Furthermore, the 3,650 times faster time was more than enough for Luo Fan. That was why he stabilized the runic formation at 3,650 times the speed of the outside world. Search for the latest updates. At that time, the flow of light had stabilized, and the chaotic energy transmitted from the sun only needed to stabilize the flow of time. The consumption was greatly reduced, and the amount of chaotic energy that could be provided for Luo Fan's cultivation instantly skyrocketed. Due to the expansion of the space that had become empty gradually returned to its original state of fullness. Seeing this, Luo Fan nodded to himself. The changes in the runic formation had confirmed his understanding of the runic system over the past 36,000 years, which naturally made him quite satisfied. Master, the auxiliary formation on the sun is not compatible with me. Can I change it? A childish, intermittent, but clear thought suddenly came from the runic formation. When Luo Fan sensed this thought, he was slightly taken aback. He understood that this was the spirituality of the runic formation that was not much different from that of an ordinary person. After understanding it, he nodded and said, yes. When he said that, the runic formation emitted another joyous sound. Then, the huge rune on the core of the sun collapsed with a loud bang, and a huge change similar to what had happened to the rune formation inside Mount Tai occurred. Although the formation on the core of the sun was larger and more complex, it only existed as a supplement to the formation within Mount Tai. Therefore, it could only be said to be a supplementary formation to the formation within the mountain. The two runic formations were able to transmit chaos yuan qi across long distances, so the connection between them was naturally incomparably tight. Under such circumstances, it was not a problem for the rune formation inside Mount Tai to change and reconstruct the rune formation on the core of the sun. Although the spirit produced by the formation within Mount Tai was similar to that of a normal person, but it was a formation in itself. Using one's own body as a reference, one could imagine the speed at which one could reconstruct a formation. In just a few breaths' time, Luo Fan suddenly felt that the chaotic energy that was transmitted from the mysterious channel had undergone an indescribable change. It seemed to have become purer and more numerous. It was as if the transmission channel had been expanded several times. At this moment, the runic formation on the core of the sun had undergone an earth-shattering change. The entire area covered by the runic formation did not change, but the number of runes on it had been reduced to 1/10 of the original. It appeared simpler, and more natural. Luo Fan sensed for a moment and understood everything. He was relieved. With a thought, He once again flipped through the various techniques in his memory related to the three flowers gathering, 5 cheese unification, and 5 cheese unification. Combining it with his own cultivation of the stainless and leakless Dan, he began to deduce and perfect it once again. Although he had spent a lot of time to sort out many techniques that seemed feasible, but had yet to be tested when he was creating the cultivation technique previously. But that was only in the past. At that time, although he knew that if he used Xiantian Yuan Shi as the foundation to cultivate, the leakless golden core would definitely be extremely different than if he used Houtian Yuan Shi as the foundation. His cultivation realm and the power of his divine powers would all be greatly improved. But no matter how he thought about it, he did not know that cultivating the leakless gold Dan with Xiantian Yuan Shi as the foundation would result in a stainless and leakless Dan. In the depths of his spirit, there was actually a stainless and leakless Dan. It was this unexpected point that caused Luo Fan's previous deductions and the various techniques he had sorted out to become imperfect. There were many flaws that should not have appeared, and these were almost fatal to his three flowers gathering, 5 cheese unification. If he wanted to achieve the three flowers gathering and the 5 cheese unification, Luo Fan had to reorganize and refine all kinds of techniques. Countless complicated characters, patterns, and runes were constantly weaving in Luo Fan's mind, constantly changing and constantly combining. One technique after another was created by Luo Fan, and one after another was overthrown by him. In the process of creating and overthrowing, Luo Fan's understanding of the stainless and leakless Dan became deeper and deeper, and his understanding of the principles of the three flowers gathering, 5 cheese unification, became more and more profound. And time passed quickly in this process. On this day, when Luo Fan had overthrown the 3,867th method of three flowers gathering at the top and 5 cheese Xiao Yuan, his mind suddenly stirred. He felt that his remnant consciousness in the outside world had discovered something unusual. A movement appeared. Counting with his fingers, he knew that it had already been tens of thousands of years since the formation had been reconstructed. Knowing how much time had passed, he naturally understood that strange movement. Where did it come from, and why did it come from? I didn't think it was really done by you. It seems that no matter what, I can't let it go this time. This thought flashed across Luo Fan's mind. With a thought, Luo Fan's figure had already disappeared within the formation. When he reappeared, he was 100 meters above his previous self. It was 8 o'clock in the morning, and his previous self was on the way to work. He was in a hurry, and his clothes were not disheveled, but one could definitely tell that he had put them on in a hurry. Looking at the hurried figures below, Luo Fan's eyes revealed an indescribable nostalgia. When he first transmigrated, it was because he had slept too late the night before that he had woken up too late and was on his way to work in a hurry. He remembered that he had tripped over something on the way and fell down. His head fell to the ground, and then his vision went black. When he reappeared, he was in the primitive world and had become the first Pai Shio in the world. At this moment, he looked at himself from a different perspective, and that feeling was quite strange. However, this strange feeling only remained in Luo Fan's mind for a short moment. In the blink of an eye, he had already suppressed all kinds of strange feelings and turned his attention to that strange place, the place where the movement came from. It was on the ground in the path of his previous self. Such a familiar space-time. If it weren't for you, my years of cultivation would have been wasted. Luo Fan's face revealed a faint sneer. Space-time for existences with a simple understanding of space-time, there was no difference at all. But when one reached the level of Luo Fan, a powerful existence who could travel to the distant past and future of 6 billion years ago, time and space were different. Movement is like every person's fingerprint, produced by different causes of space-time. Every movement must be different. Any two existences that can travel through time and space at will, no matter how similar their methods are, or even if there is no difference between them, will be the result of their traveling through time and space. They were all completely different, and the time and space that appeared in front of Luo Fan in the eyes of the Buddha, It was extremely obvious that it was the space-time created by the mysterious person who had escaped from Luo Fan's hands. To move to his predecessor, who had stepped into time and space, he did not have any intention of stopping them from traveling to the primordial world. After all, although there were countless regrets when he transmigrated, if his previous self had not transmigrated, how could the current him appear? With a thought, the gold and silver radiance in his eyes increased exponentially, as though they were two sharp swords that could pierce through space and time, following the flow of time. He moved upwards, chasing after the space-time, the place where the commotion came from, chasing after the mysterious man. You have indeed become smarter, but if you want to escape, you are still far from it. Luo Fan's expression was calm, as he casually tore the space-time apart, revealing a space-time fissure that was neither too big nor too small. At this time, his predecessor had already stepped into the space-time created by the mysterious person. On top of the movement, he fell head first, his soul directly sucked into the space-time. With a breath, he disappeared without a trace. Before Luo Fan stepped into the space-time fissure, he turned back to take a look, sighing slightly, and did not hesitate to enter the fissure. In Luo Fan's eyes, the space-time was like a long river. Every section of the river was a time period, and the space-time fissure was like the void above the river. Entering the space-time fissure was like jumping out of the river. However, no matter how he jumped out, he would eventually fall into the river. As for how long he could fall and how far he could travel on the river, it all depended on his cultivation. With Luo Fan's current cultivation, he could stay on the river for a very long time, and he could also travel a very long distance on the river. Otherwise, he would not be able to reach the end of the river. 6 billion years in the past, or future in the space-time rift, the space-time that had previously only faintly appeared. The movement became extremely obvious. In an instant, Luo Fan had already locked onto that space-time. He lifted his foot and took a step forward, directly entering a certain period of time. This was a full 49,000 years before the 20th century. The moment Luo Fan entered that time zone, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the void. Endless thunder, earth, water, fire, wind, metal, wood, water, fire, earth, and other powerful forces came crashing down on Luo Fan from all directions. In an instant, the void within a radius of 100 miles was completely annihilated, producing an extremely powerful strangling force that wanted to completely strangle the void within a radius of 100 miles. If it was someone else, or evenly Erlai, who had to endure such a violent change, what awaited him would definitely be his entire body crumbling. The leakless golden core collapsed with a loud bang, and his spirit dissipated. Without the slightest ability to resist, he died, and his soul scattered. However, at this moment it was Luo Fan, the Luo Fan who had already attained the leakless golden core. At this moment, Luo Fan's divine soul, which was hidden in the depths of his divine soul, was naturally activated, isolating all the attacking forces in an instant, forming an absolutely calm vacuum area within a 3-foot radius around his body. Leakless could isolate everything, and leakless could lock everything. As long as there was this leakless core, all attacks that did not exceed Luo Fan's cultivation would not be able to touch Luo Fan's body, nor could they cause any harm to him. At this moment, Luo Fan did not have the mood to care about the leakless core, but instantly understood that he had been tricked. I didn't expect that there would be such a dangerous trap hidden in another space-time. It seems that the reason why I transmigrated is because of me. After the shock of being tricked, Luo Fan's mind was not filled with anger, but a kind of enlightenment. With Luo Fan's intelligence, he had completely figured out the cause and effect of the matter in that instant. Chapter 595, Book 3, The Sea of Time. The stainless and leakless was in existence on the same level as the primordial immortals of the untainted world. Although the attack produced by the combination of the Tao of runes and the Tao of doomsday technology was extremely terrifying and could even annihilate the void for the stainless and leakless, it was just an ordinary change in the world, a change in power. It could not break through the stainless and leakless, and hurt Luo Fan's body. Updated with the latest chapter. Therefore, as Luo Fan walked, although the endless attacks produced by the entire Mars constantly moved along with Luo Fan's figure, none of them could get within 3 feet of his body. Along the way, only the void within a radius of a few hundred miles around him was continuously annihilated, like a torrent that was constantly surging towards the mysterious person. However, this situation changed when Luo Fan got within 500 li of the mysterious man. In that instant, the countless weapons on Mars shuddered violently, and without any warning, they stopped their attacks on Luo Fan. It was as though an extremely forceful command had suddenly come into effect. Luo Fan thought about it, and knew that this was the original programming of the mysterious man. The mysterious man was so cautious and so afraid of death. Even if there was just the slightest chance of Luo Fan surviving, he would still lure Luo Fan here to kill him. This time, he was in a dangerous place and naturally did not have any backup plans. Although the possibility of being attacked by the countless weapons on Mars was minuscule, as long as there was even the slightest possibility, he had to be fully prepared. At the root of the programming of the weapons, there was a possibility of stopping the attacks. Stopping the attack when it reached him was just the most basic setting. In fact, Luo Fan could already imagine, within the entire programming of the weapons on the planet, there would be countless other settings to prevent any harm to the mysterious man. With such a cautious and fearful mentality, he actually dared to set up such a trap to scheme against me. It seems that the fear I brought to him is beyond imagination. Luo Fan understood the mentality of the mysterious man and could not help but sigh inwardly. Since there were no longer any attacks around, Luo Fan naturally did not need to walk slowly. He lifted his foot and took a stride. His figure directly traversed hundreds of miles of the surrounding void region, directly arriving in front of the mysterious person. At this moment, the mysterious man's eyes were blank, as if he had fallen into some kind of thought and was unable to extricate himself. Luo Fan raised his hand and retracted it. The mysterious person immediately burrowed into his large sleeve. This was a rune he had set up at the last minute, opening up a void in his sleeve that was similar to the universe in the sleeve. It was specially made to accommodate this mysterious person. After taking the mysterious man away, he didn't care about the countless weapons on Mars. With a twist of his body, he tore open the space-time barrier and entered the space-time gap. First release with another leap. He had traveled 49,000 years and returned to the beginning of the 21st century, the second after his previous self had transmigrated. At this moment, his previous self was still lying on the ground. It was as if he had fallen normally. Even if he were to get up in the next moment, it would not raise any suspicion. Luo Fan floated 100 meters above his previous self, sighing to himself. With a casual point of his finger, an insignificant thought rushed out from his hand. In an instant, it crossed the distance of 100 meters, rushed down, and burrowed into his previous self's body. That thought did not contain even a trace of power, but contained all his memories before he transmigrated. It could be said that this thought represented the Luo Fan before he transmigrated. Sending this thought into his previous self's body was equivalent to recreating the Luo Fan before he transmigrated from the incomparably distant past. As the thought entered his body, the body of the Luo Fan before he transmigrated trembled. With a push of his hands, he climbed up from the ground. Oha cursed in a low voice. He raised his head and looked around. When he saw the surrounding passers-by, there were some mocking, some sympathetic, and some indifferent gazes. Suddenly, a very strange feeling welled up in him. It was as if this experience that was enough to make him feel bad in the past was just an insignificant experience. It was as if he had experienced more than this before. It was as if he had experienced an experience that was infinitely more magnificent than this. This strange feeling was without reason. Yet, it allowed the Luo Fan before he transmigrated to be indifferent towards the various gazes around him. Even the reality of being late for work did not cause him to feel the slightest bit of anxiety. He couldn't be anxious at all. After standing there in an extremely strange manner for a long while, the Luo fan, before he transmigrated, raised his hand and slowly and meticulously arranged his clothes. Tidying up his appearance, he appeared incomparably calm. This meticulous and indifferent movement made Luo fan, who had originally seemed to be in a hurry and was in a sorry state, instantly change his appearance. His whole body exuded an inexplicable aura, making anyone who saw him feel as if nothing could be difficult for this person in front of them. In midair, Luo fan observed all the changes that had occurred to his body before he transmigrated. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. No matter how hard he tried, even if he had perfectly replicated his memories before he transmigrated, even if he had completely erased the power contained within that thought. However, the traces left behind by time on his body were still unable to be completely removed. Time once again displayed its unparalleled power. Luo fan had experienced an unknown number of billions of years in the primordial world. The outstanding mentality that he had nurtured still deeply tainted his every thought. Even if the thought that he had sent into his body had been erased from his existence before he transmigrated, that outstanding mentality was still impossible to completely erase. As long as a trace of this outstanding mentality remained, it would be enough to cause an earth-shattering change to him. It would be enough to change his fate to be completely different from before and raise his achievements by an unknown number of times. As Luo fan sighed from above, his previous body felt unprecedentedly good. It was as though he had been reborn, his mind becoming unprecedentedly clear. The truth that was previously shrouded in layers of fog had become visible. The previously hazy interpersonal relationships had become incomparably clear. In that instant, he had thought of countless ways to climb to a higher position in the company. But it was also in that instant that he saw the limits of his development in the company. In the time of several breaths, he had already made a decision that he would never have dared to make lightly in the past. Resign. In the air, Luo fan saw through the thoughts of his previous body. He shook his head, knowing that his previous body possessed a trace of his outstanding mentality. It was already sufficient for him to stand out, to take care of himself, his family, his loved ones, and his friends better than ever before. No matter how it changes, it is ultimately a good thing. Let him be. After sighing inwardly, he lifted his foot and took a light stride, directly crossing through the void and arriving within the formation of Mount Tai. After returning here, he casually waved his hand. The mysterious person within the universe within the sleeve fell to the ground like a hard rock. There was even a muffled thud that resounded from the ground. Although he had already sealed the mysterious person, he did not completely seal the consciousness of the mysterious person. At this moment, the mysterious person had already recovered from his previous state of disbelief. After staying within the universe within the sleeve for such a long time, he had already understood how powerful the divine ability of the person in front of him was. He had become much more obedient. The mysterious person was extremely afraid of death. Compared to his own life, everything else was secondary to him. Therefore, after he appeared, his eyes revealed all sorts of pleading intentions, appearing incomparably submissive. Luo fan was not at all surprised by this person's performance. With a casual point of his finger, there were countless formations that separated from the mysterious person's body, floating around the mysterious person's body. As these formations separated, the mysterious person's body gained the ability to move. Of course, the mysterious person's abilities, and cultivation were all completely sealed. If Great Immortal has any orders, I will obey them. That person bowed and said. Though he had completely submitted, this person still called himself a god. It was obvious that this identity had been deeply engraved into his soul, and nothing could change it. Luo fan was too lazy to care about these small details. He asked, "Who are you? What era do you come from? Why do you keep sending people to different dimensions?" This question was the most direct reason why Luo fan sent his consciousness to Earth. When the mysterious person heard Luo fan's question, he was slightly taken aback, but he quickly regained his composure. Right now, he was a prisoner. No matter what this person asked, No matter how ridiculous or inconceivable the question was, he could only answer honestly. Therefore, after being taken aback for a moment, he immediately bowed and said, "I come from the 56th era of the Age of Chaos, which is about 6 billion years after I met you last time. The reason why I keep sending living beings to different dimensions is to borrow the connection between living beings and this dimension to transcend this dimension." The Age of Chaos. Luo Fan frowned slightly. Though the Age of Chaos was what he called the era he lived in, he didn't expect that the later generations would divide the Age of Chaos into eras and treat 100 million years as one era. Judging from this distinction, the later generations' understanding of the Age of Chaos had reached an extremely deep level. What will happen after 6 billion years? Luo Fan asked. Could it be that you came from another dimension? When a mysterious person heard Luo Fan's words, he seemed to have forgotten his current situation and exclaimed with joy. "I'm the one asking you now," Luo Fan said lightly. This made the mysterious person's body turn cold, and the smile on his face instantly froze. He had no doubt that if he didn't know the severity of the situation, what awaited him was death and the scattering of his soul. "Understand. I will speak for you now. 5 billion years in the universe is an era. We are now in the Age of Chaos. After 56 eras, it will be the end of the Age of Chaos. At that time, the entire era will gather all its potential and erupt with the last ray of light. Radiance gave birth to the gods of the heavens, and I am the god of space and time among the gods of the heavens. Divine power is only average among the gods, but because of the divine ability to freely travel through space and time, it is considered to have some status among the gods. As such, it knows some secrets that only the highest level of gods know," the god of space and time said carefully. Although these words might cause unnecessary trouble, Luo Fan didn't care too much. His purpose in capturing the mysterious person was to understand why the mysterious person sent people to chaos and whether there was any ulterior motive. As for the so-called Age of Chaos, he didn't have much understanding of the so-called Age of Chaos and the so-called Era of 6 billion years. However, after hearing this person's words, he became a little interested. Under such circumstances, no matter what this person said, it would allow him to understand the Earth and the universe better, allowing him to understand the so-called Age of Chaos. In any case, he had plenty of time. Since he had such help, why should he worry about unnecessary trouble? Since that was the case, Luo Fan naturally wouldn't interrupt and just listened quietly to the so-called god of space and time. According to the information that the gods received from the Age of Chaos, the Age of Chaos started after the Shang and Zhou dynasties' investiture of the gods. It was about 2,000 years before I met the great immortal. 2,600 million years ago belonged to the era of cultivation. The era before the era of cultivation was the era of sages that no one could understand. Even the god of wisdom couldn't see through. When the space-time god spoke of the era of sages, an extremely complicated look appeared in his eyes.